Immortal Cultivation in the Cybernetic Milky Way. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76. The candidates left behind. Nanling breathed in the relatively fresh air here, and recalled that he had seen a river here when he fell just now. His three-dimensional projection appeared on the bridge and asked, "Is there life on this planet?" "There is water and air here, and even this air is quite suitable for us humans. Maybe there will be life." Shaxia immediately replied, "This ship cannot conduct long-distance, penetrating detection on this Pluto, so it can only conduct ground reconnaissance within 100 kilometers of this ship. From the composition of the soil on Pluto is in the exploration range, it contains a large amount of organic matter and there are active bacterial communities. It is obvious that there is life here. And it can be judged that life here should be very prosperous." Shaxia gave an analysis from its perspective. Then the question is, if Shaxia's analysis is correct, then why is the planet they see now a barren scene? Nanling found it very strange. But then Shaxia reported the situation again, but it was projected on the bridge in the form of a map. This is a stratigraphic map. Because of the existence of dark matter, the detector on the Shaxia can only detect things within 1,000 meters underground. This kilometer range is enough to find out the location of some mineral veins. It's just a pity that at least no shallow mineral veins that are easy to mine have been found within a radius of hundreds of kilometers. There are only some scattered poor mineral veins that cannot support the use of Shaxia. Unfortunate dark matter, why is this thing so disruptive? It would be great if the characteristics of this dark matter could be found. Fana said distressedly, because this means that this planet cannot be explored in the simplest way, and must rely on people to measure on foot. The so-called dark matter is a general term for matter that humans cannot explore. This kind of matter is even difficult to observe, which is limited by the human observation method. Therefore, the exploration of each type of dark matter is actually a huge breakthrough in a new field for humans. The same is true for dark energy. And spiritual power is actually the general term for the various dark energies discovered by humans in the middle of the plague of locusts. At the time, all the directions of human progress encountered locusts, which was equivalent to being trapped in the small star field around the mother galaxy. In order to continue civilization, they can only roll inward crazily. Some ancient families found descriptions of cultivation in their libraries, and then through the discoveries of some pioneers, they unexpectedly found a way to observe spiritual power through scientific means. This is the origin of the current hodgepodge system of cultivation and technology. Under the crazy internal circulation, it can be said that a path has really been found. Now the major forces and noble families in the entire human race are the winners of that internal circulation, so it is not wrong to say that they are born noble. Fana had already ordered at this time. The information that can be obtained by staying on the ship is limited. I decided to operate in two ways. One team is responsible for exploring this planet, and the other team will stay here on Shaxia to repair the hull and handle logistics. Nanling knew that he would definitely stay this time. Sure enough, Fana said, "Shaonan, you should prepare what you need for exploration first, and we will decide on the two groups of people inside and outside later." This directly acquiesced to his logistics position. But it doesn't matter. Compared with venturing out, he really prefers to toss things by himself. He nodded and said nothing more. Then he listened to Aunt Liji's report on her interrogation. She said, "You will never guess that I was able to complete the interrogation so quickly just because I found such a small extra chip on his prosthesis." Everyone was surprised for a moment, and Fanny immediately reacted and said, "CK is being controlled by someone." Liji nodded, "It should be the so-called dead machine hypnosis." She was now a three-dimensional projection of the bridge, and she still had a complete body. The so-called dead machine hypnosis is that through the loading of certain remote programs or certain chips buried in the body, a highly prosthetic person begins to think that he is a machine. The key is that this dead machine hypnosis first appeared in some sweatshops. The lower-class people had to bear huge debts and work in those dark factories, which would make those highly cheap prosthetic people have the illusion that they're already a cold machine. This illusion continues to deepen, and they will really regard themselves as machines that only know how to obey orders without any self-awareness. Moreover, this mental illness can actually be contagious. As long as there is a case of the disease in a factory, it won't take long for the entire factory to be filled with such people. At first people thought it was a disease, but later they found out it was a trick used by company bosses. Some bosses who were too lazy to pay their workers a meager salary and didn't like their workers to leave work would use a jammer to interfere with the weak intelligence of their prosthetic bodies. The workers themselves were tortured to the point of numbness by life, and they were easily affected by this kind of interference, thinking that they were really machines that didn't need to rest or be paid. This is the origin of dead machine hypnosis. Fanny and Mo both shook their heads and smiled bitterly, saying, "It's really ironic. All it takes is a small chip, which anyone can make by themselves as long as they have completed basic education, to control a battle-hardened warrior." She then shook off these feelings and asked, "Did CK explain who it was and why they wanted to target us?" Li Ji said, "The Death Star Pirates. You can't imagine that the Death Star Pirates are made up of highly cybernetic looters, and many of them have even completely uploaded their consciousness to the superbrain." Fanny curled her lips in disdain and said, "A group of severe patients with mechanical syndrome." Mo held his chin with one hand and pondered, "This explains why the ship was able to attack us in hyperspace. If it is all based on the digital wisdom of the superbrain, then it can indeed do this. But this only shows the seriousness of the matter, that is, this level of power is not just as simple as looters, there must be another black hand behind the scenes." Fanny patted Mo on the shoulder and said, "Don't let your imagination run wild. Since they're hiding in the dark, it means that they must be the kind that will die when exposed to the light. Don't be afraid of them, just cut off all their claws." It must be said that Fanny's idea is really simple and direct. Nanling admired this very much, he just liked this kind of straightforwardness. Next, he began to prepare various things. The ground exploration team must not be composed of all people, he had to equip the exploration team with combat robots. In addition, in order to light up the fog of the entire planet, he had to rush to manufacture repeaters, so that he could amplify various signals on the Zooxia and complete the comprehensive monitoring of the entire Pluto. At least it was a comprehensive monitoring of the surface. The combat robots had been in stock for a long time and were quickly prepared. There were also many spare repeaters. What surprised Nanling was that Mo would stay with him on the Zooxia. He didn't think this was a lack of trust in him, he was just happy. Sister Mo was generous and gave money so quickly. This was a rare opportunity and he had to perform well. P.S. It will be on the shelves tomorrow. To be honest, if I hadn't looked at the date, I would have forgotten about it, and before it is put on the shelves, please allow me to highly recommend the book, Fighting Diary. The heroine collapses, Hilly. Chapter 77. No accident happened. Sister Mo, it's great to have your help. Many difficulties can be easily solved. That's great. Nanling praised sincerely with a sweet mouth. In his eyes, Mo is definitely an all-round auxiliary talent. Staying in the rear will definitely play a greater role than staying with Fan and I. Mo gave him a pair of beautiful eyes and said, "If it weren't for balancing the desires of those people, I wouldn't stay with you." Maybe Nanling was too enthusiastic. She always deliberately wanted to keep a distance. When the groups were divided before, Lao Mu and the other three were originally going to be assigned to Nanling's group to do hard labor and repair the ship in the rear. But how could Lao Mu and the other three be willing? They stated various reasons, saying that they were not talented enough to do such complicated work, but they were willing to carry out dangerous exploration missions for Captain Fan and I. In short, they didn't want to take on heavy maintenance tasks, and wanted to participate in relatively easy explorations that might earn extra money. Fan and I agreed to this with just a little hesitation, and even asked Nanling to assign 12 combat robots to each of the 3 people who had undergone superbrain transformation for protection. Fanny's approach was very kind and just, because she knew very well that no internal conflict should be allowed to emerge at this time, otherwise the situation, which was not very good to begin with, would only get worse. And these 3 people all have superbrains as the core, and they can also lead an independent team on such a desolate planet, which is naturally much better. Nanling sighed and said, "It's a pity that Fanny is so impatient, otherwise they can be more relaxed when I prepare a few more armor ground penetrating vehicles." Mo said, "Don't worry about other people's affairs. How is your work going?" Nanling was directing the robots to dig up the mounting. He commanded 300 robots to work together, and now a large hole has been dug around the buried hull. This place will be simply renovated later, and it can be used as a dock for repairing the Zooxia. And Nanling can control 300 robots, thanks to the assistance of AI Zooxia. There is no doubt that Mo has opened up more permissions for him, allowing him to control more conveniences on this ship. He replied, "I'm almost done here. The next step is to wait for them to find the ore veins we need and then smelt them." Mo shook his head and said, "Not enough. Make the cave above 10 meters higher." Nanling said. Now the cave has not collapsed because it is supported by the upper deck of the hull. If we did get up again, we need to make some supports first. Mo said. There is no need to be so troublesome. You can first repair the damaged pipelines on the power furnace side. After the shield function is restored, you can directly turn on the shield to mount the mountains into domes, and then you can reinforce the dome. Nanling blinked. It seemed to be more convenient this way. He asked a little aggrievedly, why didn't you say it earlier? Mo said, I thought you would know, but I didn't expect you to be so stupid. Hurry up and get busy. Your progress is already slow. She sat in Fanny's position and directed the various exploration teams calmly. It was not difficult for her to control the center. She looked too relaxed. Nanling couldn't help but feel a little angry. He was actually called stupid. He just didn't have much knowledge. And he suspected that Mo did it on purpose, although he didn't understand why such a gentle sister Mo would deliberately order him around. Mo couldn't help but feel a little funny when she saw Nanling going to the power reactor with grievance. She was teasing him on purpose. The main reason was that he had previously conducted a comprehensive inspection of the geodoxia, and had evaluated and sorted out the damage in various places, so he let Nanling go and play casually. After she had a complete maintenance plan, she would officially assign Nanling to work. This was the first time Nanling came to the power reactor of this ship. This power reactor was located in the center of the spacecraft and was the most difficult to be destroyed. It could be said to be the real heart center. It was a huge sphere covered with various profound runes, suspended in the middle of the cabin. Its color was black jade, and there seemed to be a flame looming in it. This was the power reactor of the geodoxia, or the core of spiritual power. Nanling was just in this power room, and he felt the surrounding spiritual energy that was so rich that it seemed to be suffocating. He didn't dare to absorb that spiritual energy at all. The spiritual energy was too violent. Any contact would burn his meridians. The power furnace was surrounded by a very complex spiritual line network, which was used to guide and transmit spiritual energy. There were also functional magic tools around the spiritual lines, which were the nodes of the spiritual lines. Nanling found the damaged place according to the information sent by Mo, and found that the node was damaged due to the violent impact. The surrounding spiritual lines were already in chaos, and 2 magic tools as nodes were burned. Nanling opened the blueprint of the magic tool. He wanted to see if he could learn it by stealing, but he was shocked by the complexity of the blueprint. He realized that what he could steal were actually the most common things in this era. He felt dizzy just looking at such difficult things. He could only replace them with the spare parts he brought. Even these spare parts were the original spare parts brought by geodoxia from the ancient domain. The same things could not be bought in Fennu. Nanling was still competent for the job of replacing spare parts. He could even do a good job on such a complicated task as rearranging the spiritual threads, which was related to his use of the ZIF and the third intelligence core. Without enough computing power, such a complicated job was simply beyond his reach at this stage. After much effort, Nanling finally completed the rearrangement of this part of the spiritual line. He asked Xiaoxia to start the self-check, and after confirming that there was no problem, he inspected the external pipeline for transmitting spiritual power. This was much simpler, and he had the leisure to pay attention to the situation of the exploration team. Fanny and Li Ji each brought 100 robots as their subordinates, while the remaining Deng Xiaoshu and Tao Qi each commanded 30 robots, and Lakamu and the other 2 led 12 robots each. There were a total of 7 teams, exploring in 7 directions, and setting up relay base stations along the way, so that the area that Geodoxia could control was greatly increased. However, at this time, Xiaoxia gave a prompt at the same time in that communication channel of Nanlin, Mo, Fanny and Li Ji, the 4 authorized persons. Suspected ruins of civilization were found. Nanling was surprised and even stopped the work in his hands. Unexpectedly, the ruins of civilization were found. Although it was suspected. Fanny immediately said, "Where is it? I'll go check it out." She was so excited. Discovering alien civilizations was a great achievement among pioneers. She, Fanny, was destined to become the queen of pioneering. Xiaoxia immediately gave a topographic map and marked the location of the ruins. It was actually at the edge of the range of the repeater base station that Fanny had installed earlier. Nanling was a little stunned when he saw it. He secretly sent a private message to Mo and asked, "Sister Mo, Boss Fanny's luck seems to be a little wrong." He vaguely felt that there was something wrong. Before he met Fanny, although his life occasionally had ups and downs, it was generally on the path he planned. But after meeting Fanny, it seemed that there would always be accidents. Mo did not respond to him for a while, but only after a while did she suddenly mention another person to him. Do you remember how Miss Fenyi called Fanny? Nanling was speechless. Unlucky am I. Could this name be true? It seems to be true. Miss Fenyi was originally a domineering female general, but something went wrong immediately after she met Fanny. Now he can only rely on the planet he bought from Fanny for 10 billion to try to turn things around. It's really tragic. So, everyone who meets Fanny will be unlucky. And Fanny herself will be lucky because of this. He suddenly felt that if nothing unexpected happened, there would definitely be an accident on this planet this time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 78 The Reasons for the Special Anthems. The power reactor of the Zhuoxia was repaired, and the shield was turned on again, immediately propping up the entire mountain belly, forming a cave large enough to serve as a repair dock for the Zhuoxia. Next, the robot will leave the construction of the frame beams to the AI, and Nanling will return to the bridge to watch the great adventure of Boss Fan. Exploring the remains of alien civilizations, this is the romance of pioneers. Nanling was very envious at this time, and he also wanted to participate in such an adventure. Mo just nodded and said nothing when he saw him coming. Strictly speaking, it was a waste of resources for the two of them to be here together. Anyone who stayed could preside over the repair work of the Zhuoxia. At this time, they were all very concerned about the situation on Fanny's side. Where are the remains? Fanny was facing an empty wasteland, which seemed to be only blue-gray soil, and nothing else. This was completely different from the city ruins she imagined. Zhuoxia had marked the target again, and Fanny took her robot team of 100 people to take a closer look, and then saw the so-called remains of civilization. To be honest, it was just a piece of grey stone, which looked like some kind of ornament, but it had stayed in the dust and mud for too long. When Fanny picked it up, she could only feel that it was a fragment of some ornament. Indeed, this is the relic of civilization. Just this fragment is enough to prove that there was once an intelligent civilization on this planet, but I don't know when it all disappeared. Nanling said, "Show me the soil analysis of this planet." He soon got a map. The amount of information on this map was very high. He only needed to focus on one place, and the soil composition analysis within a minimum radius of 1 kilometer would appear in front of him. He looked at it carefully again and said, "This doesn't make sense. The soil here contains sufficient organic matter and very active bacteria, but why can't I see any higher biological cells? It feels like everything on the ground has been wiped out by some existence." Mo has already said, Zhuoxia, use the database to match the situation here and find similar cases. After all, this situation is a bit too scary. Nanling did give a guess. Maybe it's the dark matter cloud. Mo shook her head and said, "This entire galaxy is in this dark matter cloud. If the dark matter cloud can really wipe out all life on this planet, then why are we fine? I saw you didn't even wear a mask when you were out there. Aren't you still fine?" She used Nanling's own example, which left him speechless. At this time, Zhuoxia's comparison search had already produced results, and thousands of pictures suddenly filled the bridge. Nanling and Mo were both stunned, and then stared blankly at the photos in front of them and the names of the planets marked on these photos. Nanling blinked and said, "If I remember correctly, these planets are now the earliest administrative planets in each star domain, right?" Mo nodded and said, "The ancient domain's Fengir star is also here. This is the capital planet of our ancient domain." Then she said to Fan and I with a grim expression, "We're in big trouble. Do you know what that means?" Fan and I said, "I understand, but there is nothing to be afraid of." After the plague of the Dark Locusts, the predecessors opened up the star map. Sometimes only one pioneering ship was needed to clear the Dark Locusts on a planet. What's more, it's us now. She seemed very confident. Nanling also got the keywords from her words, and then immediately started the relevant search. Using Zhuoxia's database, he finally knew the origin of this planet or the similar landforms of many planets. Dark Locusts, this kind of creature has a mystery of origin, and its behavior is also unpredictable. They destroyed civilizations one by one. Anyway, before humans walked out of the neighboring galaxies around the mother galaxy, they had occupied almost every place that once had life. But to be honest, with the military strength of the Human Federation at the time, they were able to fight back and forth with these Hades locusts. At least they were not completely beaten. How could they occupy the entire galaxy? There are too many mysteries here. And all the planets occupied by the Hades locusts will be covered with some kind of highly corrosive mucus, which is the secretion of the Hades locusts when they eat. They devour all organic organisms and then secrete strong acid mucus to cover the entire planet. Even if there are plant seeds and microorganisms in the original soil, they will be completely destroyed and killed by this mucus, and eventually become a completely dead planet. But it is amazing that when the king insect of the Hades locusts dies, the remaining Hades locusts will be leaderless and quickly weakened, and even die without too much human intervention. And the bodies of the Hades locusts that died in batches will become the best fertility in the soil after they rot quickly. At this time, all the life on the original planet has died, and nothing will grow because of it. But if someone brings new seeds to sow, then it will be lush again in a short time. Mo said, no matter what, this time we can be considered to have made a lot of money. A habitable planet wrapped in unknown dark matter can be sold for a good price, whether it is used for scientific research, colonization, or as a toy for those real big guys. Nanling was relieved when she heard this, and then asked in the hyperspace active group. In this way, the boss will have money to operate our Juoxia again, right? Fanny, why are you suddenly talking in this group? That's right, I'll also bring Sister Liji in, and then the work group can be officially expanded, and everyone on the ship can be brought in. So Liji joined the group. Liji said, so there is such a group. What were you doing when you were flying in hyperspace before? Fanny hesitated, she was a little embarrassed to admit that she was playing games. Nanling had already said frankly, we have loaded a lot of learning materials, and Boss Fanny and Sister Mo will take time to teach me. Liji nodded repeatedly after hearing this, thinking it was very good. Fanny breathed a sigh of relief, at least she maintained her personality in front of Liji. Mo smiled at Nanling and said, we're really lucky this time, but Fanny, I think we should get in touch with the master as soon as possible after we get out. Fanny waved her hand nonchalantly and said, don't worry about that. That old guy actually dared to cut off my pocket money. Don't expect me to care about him easily in the future. Nanling felt that Fanny's father was really miserable. But this matter had nothing to do with him, so he just ignored it. It's just that Fanny's luck was too weird. This kind of thing can definitely be called an accident, right? But this accident is a good thing. It seems that Fanny's leadership is not only quantum uncertain, but also extremely random. Chapter 79 Nanling's sense of crisis. The exploration of Pluto continued, and there were no more accidents, as if they were able to come here because of Fanny's good luck. CK gradually regained some of his sanity and gave some more information. That is, the Death Star pirates will indeed act as the black gloves of some big figures in Chinuano 6, but the real behind-the-scenes support for their actions is not these big figures. This person should be useful. Nanling will take time to repair CK's body that was smashed by him, and hide some tricks in it. This is necessary. After all, Fanny didn't say that she would execute him, so according to Nanling's understanding of this young lady's character, she will probably let him go. Prepared for a rainy day, even Mo was very convinced after knowing his approach. The dock has gradually taken shape, and Nanling is now waiting for the materials to be put into the pot. However, it is frustrating that no decent surface veins have been found on this planet, and deep veins cannot be found in a short time. The dark matter diffused in this galaxy interferes too much with the detection equipment. However, Mo did not seem to have such concerns. After the dock structure was roughly completed, she calmly operated on that bridge. Then Nanling was shocked to see that the cabins on both sides of the Juoxia spacecraft were opened. 4 medium-sized fusion reactors were revealed in these cabins. Nanling knew about these 4 medium-sized fusion reactors. They were generally used as auxiliary energy sources on spacecraft. After all, many equipment still needed to convert electrical energy for use. At the same time, they were also backup energy sources. It was no problem to use them when the main power reactor was not working. But what did Mo mean by revealing these 4 fusion reactors at this time? Mo said, I've been studying that period of history recently, and I found that even after humans discovered the use of spiritual power, they still didn't eliminate the original system. That's because the scientific system is better at material conversion. For example, now that these 4 fusion reactors are fully turned on, they can be used as production lines for all materials. Throw these bricks and stones in as fuel, and after a fully controllable fusion reaction, we can decide what the byproducts are. Nanling was shocked, but then she felt that this was the right answer. Technology has developed to this level, at least it won't be stumped by basic materials. He just asked in confusion, why are there so many physical mining companies? Mo said, That's a cost issue. It's not difficult to build such a reactor. The key is how to control the required output. This is a very complex and sophisticated process. For the bosses of those rough-out companies outside, the cost of mastering that process is too high. They can't mine on the administrative star anyway, and they have to pay the transportation cost anyway, so they just go to other planets or asteroid belts for physical mining. That way that cost is lower. Nanling understood it after hearing it. This method is not suitable for general commercial operations, or not suitable for low-level business. Because its initial investment is too large, although after the initial investment, subsequent production can be completely zero cost. But just this initial investment and the subsequent maintenance costs that may be required, this makes the bosses at the bottom stay away. Nanling hurriedly went forward to study it, and the intelligent core quickly helped him access this part of the knowledge, and then he knew what to do. Ignite the fusion furnace, set a specific confinement magnetic field, and then control the furnace to produce specific materials. Nanling pondered and said, maintaining the fusion furnace itself also requires energy. We can produce basic materials such as iron and aluminum, but if we produce those special materials, I'm afraid that the energy lost to maintain the furnace will exceed the energy generated by the furnace, right? Mo nodded and said, so we still have the main power furnace, but that kind of thing is not worth the loss. We just need to produce enough basic materials. Nanling nodded. With these 4 fusion furnaces, the basic supply needs of the Vuoxia can be fully met. After all, the fusion furnace can transform matter at the atomic level. In other words, people can really eat dirt when they're hungry. The 4 power furnaces started production soon, producing a large amount of special steel for repairing the hull structure. Nanling took a look and simply moved out the robot production line, using the excess energy at the 4 fusion furnaces and the various elements produced to start mass-producing robots. Mo didn't understand at the time. She asked, "What are you doing?" Nanling said, "It's better to be prepared. Mainly according to the maintenance plan you gave, we will repair the structure inside the hull first. That doesn't require too much material, but the work is more difficult. So I plan to use the surplus materials at this stage to make our robot guards. After all, we have to be prepared for the worst. What if the nether locusts here revive?" Mo asked tangled. "Why is your damn sense of crisis so strong?" Nanling sighed and said, "The main reason is that Boss Fanny is too worrying." Mo was surprised. Nanling raised his head and said, "Look, when we first explored the colored disk galaxy, no one thought there would be any good discoveries there at first. But we happened to find the original crystal veins there. This is considered a sudden good fortune, right?" Mo nodded. This matter could not be refuted. Nanling said, "But then, you are buried tens of thousands of meters underground. Let's not talk about the looters. The key point is that the landing module worth 8 billion was directly scrapped. Then Miss Feng Yu was implicated and lost her official position. Now she can only become a businessman. We had to leave Chenyuan 06, but on the way we were attacked by the Death Star pirates and ended up here. It can be said that after the good luck, things took a sharp turn for the worse. If it weren't for Boss Fanny's solid foundation and good mentality, I really don't know what would happen now." Mo seemed to be lost in memories. She covered her forehead with some distress and said, "You mean, we have discovered the peculiarity of this galaxy after bad luck and we are considered to have good luck, and then we are going to be unlucky again?" Nanling shrugged and said, "Anyway, the robots I made are all old models. There is no need to consume the inventory on the ship. We can just drop them when we leave." In fact, he felt that since this planet was destroyed by the nether locusts, how could he ensure that all the nether locusts here would die out on their own? Although various studies have shown that when humans encounter the dark locusts, they are already in a process of rapid decline and degeneration, and even without human intervention, the dark locusts will soon die on their own. But Nanling just feels uneasy. After all, when playing games with the boss, the dark locusts are not simple enemies. Mo thought about it and decided to let Nanling do whatever she wants. She didn't care. And what happened later did prove the correctness of Nanling's approach. That is, an exploration team from Ladomu encountered the enemy. "What the hell are these? Help, who will save me?" A voice was sent over, and its abrupt ending and the subsequent various terrible gnawing sounds made people shudder. As expected, there was another accident. Chapter 80. The remnants of the Dark Locusts. Fanny and Liji's robot teams of 100 people quickly rushed to the scene of the accident. Their speed was not slow. In fact, they did not stop fighting when they arrived. It was a river beach, and 10 robots were chasing more than 20 strange creatures. Yes, they were chasing. Those strange creatures were like multi-legged reptiles, lying on the ground alone, more than half a person's height, and they had two heads. One was located at the front, with huge compound eyes and dangerous mouth parts. But the other was located at the tip of the tail, like a chain ball, with spikes and a pair of small compound eyes. When running, the small head of the tail was left behind to observe the enemy in time, and when Fanny and Luigi and their robots completed the encirclement, these tails all stood up again, spitting out long spikes, and took a fighting posture. In this fighting posture, the main head of this creature became the most solid chassis, supported on the ground by four of the thickest and most powerful limbs, and the movement was swift and integrated with attack and defense. However, no matter how well equipped they are, these things theoretically should not be the opponents of combat robots. After all, they are too primitive. But the fact is that from the recorder of the robot on the scene, it can be seen that the unlucky guy actually wanted to take a bath in the river with two robots. For this reason, he deliberately turned off the information transmission so that Nanling and Mo of Zooxia would not know what he was doing. Of course, the first thing Luigi did when she arrived at the scene was to take over the authority of these robots and then get this information. Looking at the man walking naked into the river, Mo's eyes were cold and seemed to have electric light jumping, and he said coldly, "Disgusting." Nanling immediately nodded in agreement and said, "It's quite disgusting." Mo said, "I mean, this person disregards his own safety for his own little desires. This behavior is disgusting." Nanling said, "I mean, he looks disgusting." Mo. ... She found that she couldn't refute this. Then they saw the result on the screen. The man was taking a bath, and it seemed that he rarely enjoyed this kind of enjoyment. As a result, they were suddenly dragged into the water. The two robots rushed to rescue them, but it was obvious that they were also entangled and dragged into the deep water area. The robots on guard on the river beach quickly went into the water and surrounded them from upstream and downstream, and finally forced the two-headed worms to the shore. However, the unlucky guy who was dragged into the water was never seen again. Zooxia had a monitoring system for all the vital signs of the people. The vital signs of the man had completely disappeared, and it was obvious that he was dead. Lao Mu and his other buddy also rushed to the scene, but they could only face a mess. "Let us do it. Let us deal with these hateful worms. I want to avenge my brother personally." Lao Mu did not have any complaints, because he had long been accustomed to the people around him suddenly dying in front of him. But he was very angry, because they had obviously found a threshold to take advantage of the opportunity to improve and were on the way, but this person was seeking his own death. "It seems that our lives have been too good these days, so that we have lost the vigilance that the lower class should have," Lao Mu said angrily. Fanny nodded and asked Lao Mu and the other two to leave their robots to attack. Fanny watched patiently from the side. In fact, Lao Mu's battle was mediocre. After all, he had not done this before. But some factors that were shown were very worrying. That is, these two-headed insects clearly showed strong resistance to energy weapons during the battle. The robot's energy gun attack effect was not very large, or it just hurt them for a while. Nanling was very concerned about this. He asked, "Are the nether locusts very resistant to energy weapons?" Yes, he was sure that this was a kind of nether locust. After all, this planet was once completely occupied by nether locusts. If an abnormal life form was found at this time, it could only be the descendants of nether locusts. Mo said, "At least during the plague of the nether locusts, they did not show strong resistance to energy weapons, and it does not rule out that the individuals here have a special evolutionary direction. It's a pity that Zooxia's database on the nether locusts is not comprehensive, otherwise we would have made a great discovery." Nanling heard this and said, "We can also study it now." Mo nodded, then opened the communication and said, "Capture some living bodies, they are extremely valuable for research." Lao Mu did not act pretentiously after receiving the order, and immediately changed the instructions of his robots. So these robots went up one by one with bare hands, allowing the limbs and mouth parts of the two-headed worms to attack their bodies, but they could not destroy their external armor. Then the robots worked together and controlled 9 two-headed worms by brute force, and the rest were killed in the previous battle. The individual combat power of these two-headed worms is actually very strong, but compared with today's human civilization, it can only be regarded as primitive. They have resistance to energy weapons, but they have no resistance to weapons using spiritual power, and it happens that spiritual power weapons are not precious in this era. After capturing 9 two-headed worms alive, Nanling has begun to build cages for imprisonment. According to his understanding of the nether locusts, the body fluids and secretions of these nether locusts are highly acidic, so the cages he built have this requirement to ensure that there is no risk of error. It was Laomu who escorted the two-headed one back. His expression was a little depressed, and he seemed to be hurt by what had just happened. I always feel that these things are very dangerous. It may not be a good idea for us to bring them on the spacecraft. Laomu gave his own advice. Nanling looked at him and always felt that the temperament of this old bastard seemed to have changed. He became more cowardly. Nanling patted Laomu on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, we won't bring them on the Zhuoxia. I will settle them outside the camp and there will be enough guards." As soon as the voice fell, countless robots came out behind him, and they formed a steel wall with robots to surround the entire camp formed at the crash site. Suddenly, the sense of security exploded. Old Mew stared at this scene in a daze, and asked in surprise, "You stayed here to do this?" Nanling nodded and said, "How is it? Is it okay? After all, we must ensure our own safety first." Old Mew shook his head first, and then nodded. "You're right, your own safety is the first priority. I didn't expect that you still maintain the necessary vigilance, unlike me, who was slack." Nanling commanded the robot to stuff the 9 two-headed worms into the cage, and then placed them outside the dock near the stern. Well, that is, where his room can be seen. Old Mew is right, this is indeed not to be taken lightly, so he has to be more cautious. And now they have to face how many of these two-headed worms are there on this Pluto planet. Chapter 81a. Degenerating Race. The exploration of this planet is still going on, but everyone has become more cautious, beware of the activities of the two-headed worms. However, within the surface range, they rarely encounter two-headed worms. It seems that they only reproduce in areas where rivers pass. Soon Xiaoxia's inspection report came out, indicating that the river beach area is a rare place where microorganisms are active, and these two-headed worms obviously feed on the microorganisms of the river beach. For those captured two-headed worms, they have also conducted research to a certain extent. This research was completed independently by Xiaoxia, the AI. After all, neither Nanling nor Mo research talents. They can only let Xiaoxia obtain basic information according to standard procedures. In this era, almost everything is procedural, which is enough for AI to operate independently to obtain some important basic information. For example, after killing 7 two-headed worms, they knew the water content in the body of the two-headed worm is extremely high, and it cannot exist for too long without water. The two heads have independent consciousness and a complete brain structure, but most of the time the secondary brain of the tail is attached to the main brain of the head. The most incredible thing is that the reproductive organs of this two-headed worm are completely inside the body, and their gender cannot be distinguished from the surface. No, it should be said that they are male and female, because after dissection, it was found that there is a complete set of independent organs in the front and back of their bodies. And the place where these organs meet is a reproductive cavity in their bodies. Among the captured two-headed worms, there is even a reproductive cavity full of larvae. It's a pity that because they didn't think of rehydrating these worms at the time, these larvae died. It seems very fragile. No, this two-headed worm is not fragile at all. They can even reproduce well by swallowing some microorganisms in the sand of the river beach. This kind of vitality is simply terrible. Because from their own terrible mouthparts that are degenerating but not completely degenerated, it can be seen that they were definitely a terrible predator. At this time, Nanling saw the genetic map of this creature and was surprised. He said, "Is there anything wrong with this gene map?" Xiaoxia said, "There won't be any problem. This is the result of multiple sampling. There won't be any problem." Then it said, "From the biological samples that have been captured, their genes all come from the same individual. This may be related to the way they reproduce themselves. However, there are still certain deviations between different individuals. This is due to the different growth environments. From this point of view, they have strong adaptability and evolve very quickly." Nanling didn't think much of it. He said, "I only care about what this life will look like if these dormant genes are fully activated." That's right. Through the gene map, it can be seen that large sections of the genes of this two-headed worm are in a dormant state. And with so many dormant genes, this creature can actually be passed down. If it were another species, it would have become extinct long ago. Xiaoxia said. According to data analysis, if all these genes are awakened, then this creature will revert to its ancestral evolution in a short period of time, and will have super adaptability and super evolutionary power. Nanling pondered and asked, How does it compare to the nether locusts in the early stage of the nether locust plaguing the Galaxy Past series? This time it was not Yaxia who answered, but Mo's voice suddenly sounded beside Nanling. The nether locusts in the early stage of the nether locust plague were actually severely degraded nether locusts. At this time, the two of them were outside Nanling's room, looking at the two-headed worms in the remaining two cages and said, I don't have too much detailed data, but I vaguely know that the nether locusts at the time seemed to occupy the entire starry sky, but in fact they fought each other on a planetary basis. Why did humans at the time try their best to be enemies of these nether locusts? It's because our ancestors knew that once the nether locusts in the entire galaxy united, the fate of mankind would be not much different from those civilizations that have been destroyed. But fortunately, until these nether locusts completely withdrew from the stage, they did not unite again. Nanling was shocked. This meant that the nether locusts that humans had faced had never been in their prime. Even the nether locusts that were constantly weakening almost caused humanity to collapse. This was a lot of information. Nanling couldn't help but ask, Sister Mo, what do you think caused the genes of the nether locusts to suddenly be suppressed and then fall apart? Mo said, this question is also simple. There is a king insect on each planet that holds the nether locusts together for the entire planet, and there are obviously higher level beings above these king insects. They can be called emperor insects for the time being. The existence of the emperor insect among the nether locusts has always been firmly believed by nether locust scientists, but it's a pity that no one has evidence of the true existence of the emperor insect so far. Nanling found it incredible when he heard it. He said, according to this, as long as the emperor insect exists, it can awaken the dormant genes in these two-headed insects. Mo said, maybe, who knows? But there should still be a king insect on this planet, otherwise these degraded versions of the nether locusts would not still exist on this planet. The fact that the king insect is still alive also sounds really sensational. I wonder how long this king worm has lived. Mo said, don't worry, even if the king worm is still alive, it won't pose much of a threat. Look at these two-headed worms, they have already degenerated into this state, and its condition is obviously not much better. As they were chatting, a rain cloud suddenly floated over the sky, and then it began to rain. Mo frowned and took a step back to avoid the rain curtain, and then said, you should be careful too. This planet is strange. Don't easily touch things that have not been thoroughly studied. Nanling followed his advice and said, come to my room, I'll treat you to a meal. Mo nodded and said nothing. She thought it was just a dish made by a robot chef, but she was eating in Nanling's room. As for why she didn't feel any disgust when she went to Nanling's room to eat. In fact, this room was behind them, and this room had a big hole due to a series of impacts before landing. Now it has just been cleaned up. This is actually not much different from an open-air restaurant. Nanling invited Mo to sit in front of his windowsill, then he took out a bottle of Fanny's favorite juice from the folding shelf in his room, added some nitrogen put and handed it to her. This is my favorite way to drink it, you can try it. Mo was quite surprised. After taking a sip, she felt the tense bubbles in the juice, and the taste was improved by more than one level. She said, I didn't expect you to have such a retro hobby, but it's really good. Nanling asked in surprise, why is this hobby retro? Mo said, since everyone started to pursue pure natural at some point, this processed beverage has become a way of drinking for the lower class and will be despised in the upper class. And you add a gas here, although it tastes better, but drinking too much will make people burp, which is a very rude action in upper class occasions. The upper class follows the lower class, and gradually this kind of beverage will become unpopular. After hearing this, Nanling understood why the sparkling water she liked was so rare outside. It was probably due to the changes of the times. But he didn't mind, and seeing that Mo didn't seem to mind, he didn't take it to heart. It was a rare opportunity to invite his boss to be a guest, so he had to show off his cooking skills this time. Chapter 82 Cooking Fish for You. Nanling operated in his room, and a stove appeared in front of him. To be honest, these days, no matter how much they like original flavor, the rich will choose to use cooking robots to make food. On the one hand, this is more reassuring, and on the other hand, the robot is extremely accurate in the proportion of ingredients, heat and seasoning, and can make the most standard food without worrying about overturning. Even if ordinary people choose to cook by themselves, most of them will accurately mix according to the standard recipe, and only a few people who really like cooking will study the recipe themselves. Nanling is probably one of the few people, because he always wants to restore some of the tastes in his memory. Just like now, he used the simple ingredients at hand to make a delicious pickled fish for Mo, which really surprised Mo. I didn't expect you to have this hobby. Mo was surprised for a while, and then he couldn't help but try this pickled fish. She tasted the delicate fish meat and the strong flavor that burst out in her mouth, and couldn't help complaining. "Is this fish Fanny's favorite rainbow fish?" Nanling said. "I bought it with my own money." "Anyway, didn't the boss Fanny say that we can all enjoy it together?" Mo was speechless. She couldn't say that she usually saved this kind of fish for Fanny, right? She immediately ate a few more chopsticks, and the more she ate, the more delicious it tasted. Suddenly, she felt that Nanling didn't violate the rules. What's wrong with her eating one? Anyway, it was this bastard who was eating. Her mood inexplicably improved, and she even commented, "This method is also quite retro. It uses very ancient seasoning methods from Xing. It seems that you like Xing culture very much." Nanling nodded and said, "It's just that I like it more." Mo said, "That's really rare. I thought only those old antiques would like Xing culture." Nanling was at a loss for a moment. Why was she suddenly labeled as an old antique? Mo hesitated for a moment, then said, "Come and eat together, this fish is not cheap. Also, your cooking skills are good." Nanling immediately came over with a bowl of rice with a smile. "To eat with your boss, you have to be thick-skinned." The rain outside was getting heavier and heavier, and the cool wind blew over the two of them, which was quite romantic. However, the two surviving two-headed worms seemed a little too active. They kept roaring, and even the sound of rain could not cover such sounds. Mo gently bit the chopsticks and sucked the taste of the tip of the chopsticks, then frowned and said, "It's a bit too noisy." Nanling took a bite of rice, then said, "Xiaoxia, analyze the sound waves of this cry." The next moment, a three-dimensional projection appeared in front of the window where he and Mo were, showing the sound wave spectrum of the two-headed worm. And analyzed. There are a lot of high-frequency sound waves in this sound wave, which can be transmitted over a very long distance and has a strong rhythm. Mo listened and picked up a piece of fish meat elegantly and asked, "Can you analyze the meaning of the sound wave?" Xiaoxia said, "The sound wave samples have been collected, and more samples are needed for analysis." Nanling looked at the fish meat left and there was not much left, so he stopped his chopsticks and said, "I guess this is asking for help from their tribe. I will go to prepare first." Mo said, "I think your preparations here are sufficient. What else do you need to prepare?" Nanling said, "No matter how much preparation is not excessive, unless it is foolproof." Mo shook his head and said, "It's up to you. I don't know where you get this caution from." Nanling did not get up, sitting in his original position, and with a thought, he started more robots from the dock. However, these robots are all old models. Nanling named them Iron Guards, which are quite retro. They all stayed in the dock and did not fire, existing as a backup force. Mo complained about Nanling's sense of crisis countless times in her heart, but there was one thing that Nanling predicted, that is, the two-headed worms were indeed calling for help. Xiaoxia sounded the alarm. A large number of two-headed worms have been found to have emerged from the riverbed and wet low-lying areas. Alarm, the number is astonishing. Mo used chopsticks to pick up a fish bone from between her lips, and then said, "Count the number." Xiaoxia immediately projected a set of data in front of the two of them. 51,834. 62,219. 67,967. 83,451, the numbers kept jumping up, and it was obvious that more and more two-headed worms appeared in the detection range of the Xiaoxia. Because many of these two-headed worms were lurking underground, and the soil of this planet also absorbed a lot of dark matter, these dark matter blocked the detection of most detection equipment, so the Xiaoxia often had to wait until these two-headed worms came to the ground before they could conduct reconnaissance. However, a worse situation occurred. Some two-headed worms actually began to attack the base station for signal relay. The relay base station was unattended, and they had not expected to encounter such a thing. It didn't take long for 4 of them to fall. For a while, the connection between Xiaoxia and the outbound exploration team was cut off. Mo was nervous at the time. However, the next moment, Nanling had already taken out his backup plan. "I expected something like this to happen." As he said that, he released a heavy drone that he had specially developed, and made it slowly rise into the sky. The signal covered the places it passed, and it was a larger area of signal coverage. It didn't take long for them to reconnect with the exploration teams that had lost contact for a short time. Mo was a little stunned. They were prepared for this. Nanling said regretfully, "It's a pity that this floating base station can't accurately detect the situation under the ground." In the future, we have to find a way to conduct more underground detection, otherwise these insects will appear and disappear mysteriously and it will be very troublesome. Mo could only sigh that it was too easy to cooperate with Nanlin, and he would consider all the details for her. Nanlin asked, should we let them come back? After all, the dock is under attack. Mo shook her head and said, on the contrary, the dock has been surrounded by the swarm of insects. There are not many combat robots around them. If they want to come back, they have to break through the swarm of insects, which is not a good idea. I have asked them to hide or find another place to gather outside, and make plans after the matter here is over. Mo was still eating fish. She thought Nanling's cooking skills were really good and delicious. Nanling stole a glance at her and secretly memorized the taste of her female boss. Then she looked at the battlefield. Thousands of two-headed insects had already rushed to the front robot defense line, and they started a tragic battle in the increasingly heavy rain. The Iron Guard was a little bulky, but the armor was thick and surprisingly equipped with shotgun kinetic weapons. When the two-headed insects approached, they almost fired at their faces, causing great damage. And the shotgun kinetic energy is very strong, often penetrating 2 or 3 two-headed insects before losing their penetrating power. In this way, a circle of extremely terrifying killing fields was formed in front of the Iron Guards, and no two-headed worms could approach them. It seemed that no matter how many of these two-headed worms there were, they could not break through the Iron Guard's defense line arranged by Nanlin. Mo was surprised again, and she asked, how did you think of using kinetic weapons? Nanling said, I just remembered that we used kinetic weapons in the Galaxy Past series, and the killing effect seemed to be quite good. Mo then realized, are these all restored guns in the Galaxy Past series? Nanling nodded and said, yes, after all, ready-made drawings can be searched in the database. However, just as he finished speaking, Fanny's voice suddenly came from the hyperspace active group. Wait for me to come back, I'll be here. She seemed very excited, and added to Nanling, you are still good at playing. Nanling was at a loss. Mo stared at Nanling intently, wondering whether to send this flatterer to his death. This operation was completely what Fanny wanted. How could she resist the temptation of this real game? Anyway, not long after, Nanling saw a fire phoenix flying in the sky. Is it going to hurry up? Nanling felt Mo's gaze as if it was real, and shuddered. I just think it would be a waste if the slag produced from the fusion furnace is not used. It's better to use it to make bullets for kinetic weapons, Mo said. No need to explain, I understand. Why was that look so contemptuous, as if looking at a flattering villain? What did she understand? Chapter 83 Just to play. Seeing their troublesome captain coming back, Nanling immediately felt a lot of pressure. Because Fanny's return meant uncertainty and unexpectedness. His originally confident mood immediately felt unreliable, and suddenly said to Mo, why don't we bring everyone back to increase our defense's strength? Apart from the limited abilities of Lao Mu and the other two, at least Lao Ding and Lao Tao are both good at combat. If Aunt Li Ji is here, she can also use her leader module and the Vuoxia to coordinate and command all the robots here to fight more precisely. Mo immediately understood that this was Nanling's restless consciousness that had nowhere to go and was starting to work again. She said, don't you know that if Fanny is serious, she can burn all the two-headed worms here by herself? Forget it, I'll listen to you. She still compromised. Because she suddenly realized that she had always been the one to check for Fanny's omissions and fill in the gaps in the past, and now it was rare for someone to do such things for her, so she really shouldn't discourage Nanling's enthusiasm. So she said, send out your drone. I know you must have a backup plan for this. Nanling nodded when he heard it. He was not surprised that his backup plan was seen through. After all, he never dared to underestimate Mo's wisdom. Immediately, 3 large drones flew out of the hangar and took off to pick up Li Ji and the other 4 people. After landing, Fan and I came to Nanling with great interest and stretched out a white and tender hand. Hurry up and bring it to me. Don't tell me you didn't prepare a weapon for me. Nanling sighed and took out a retro-style Gauss rifle from the weapon cabinet beside him, facing Mo's gaze that wanted to clear the court of the Emperor. This Gauss rifle can switch between rapid fire and sniper modes according to different magazines and electromagnetic frequencies. It is a very versatile kinetic weapon, and it can also be said to be the epitome of kinetic weapons. Of course, this is also that favorite gun of Boss Fan and I when playing games. Any game level, as long as it is a retro shooting type, she will definitely try every means to find this gun or a similar style of gun. At this time, Fanny was so excited that she kept rubbing her hands. She said, I didn't expect that you really remembered what I like, you are so nice. Fanny was jumping up and down like a child. It is hard to imagine that as the genius eldest daughter of the Gu family, she obviously has the Immortal Cultivation, but she just likes to play with these retro firearms. In Nanling's opinion, this Gauss rifle is not much different from a figurine for Fanny. It is really rare for girls to have such a hobby. Fanny eagerly took the gun from Nanling. Her expression was obsessed and excited, and even her face flushed. She couldn't let it go in her hand, and groped the gun handle and said, "The real touch is very comfortable, Shonen, I love you so much." Nanling immediately felt that the murderous aura around him was a little strong. He quickly changed the subject and said, "If the boss likes it, just give me a raise. Here, this is your magazine, use it sparingly." Fanny happily took the magazine, skillfully installed it on the gun handle, and then went to play her own real-life shooting game. By the way, she also said, "Mo, give him a raise, don't be stingy." Nanling smiled happily. He was short of money now. Originally, he wanted to save money for spiritual power infusion, but he didn't expect that he couldn't help it and spent all the money on the purchase of materials for hurricane armor and good food and drink. He really spent money like water and didn't save any. Seeing that there were so many high-level wind skills waiting for him to exchange and learn, he was anxious in his heart. So he faced Mo's fierce and cold eyes and said very straightforwardly, "Sister Mo, Boss Fanny said that she would give me a raise." Mo's expression was cold, and she said, "How can I flatter a villain?" This was a big hurtful, and it seemed that she was really angry. Nanling was stunned for a moment but didn't think anything of it. After all, if he couldn't even bear this, how could he grow up in the lower class area? He just frowned slightly, pondered for a while, thought of his current poverty, and said, "Sister Mo, don't you think Boss Fanny is very pitiful?" Mo was stunned. She didn't expect Nanling to say that. But at this time, she followed Nanling's gaze and looked at Fanny, who was so wanton and even unbridled, and her face couldn't help but appear absent-minded for a moment. Then she said thoughtfully, "Fanny, it turns out that Fanny has always been very depressed." Nanling said, "That's natural, otherwise why would you two run away from home?" The eldest lady would run away from home, that must be because she felt that the family was too boring. Mo didn't question how Nanling knew this, she just shook her head and said, "I thought she was very happy after escaping." The tone was much softer, and it could even be said that she was a little apologetic. "I think Fanny should have her own hobbies, and shouldn't be locked by other people's eyes. Sorry for what happened just now." Nanling smiled and said, "Okay, I forgive you." Mo was stunned. This was another answer she had never expected. But strangely, it was because of this answer that she felt that the distance between her and Nanling had shortened a lot. It seemed that suddenly they were no longer in a superior-subordinate relationship, and there was no longer a sense of distance brought by status. Instead, they were like equals, friends talking. Then she reacted, and a helpless smile appeared on her cold face and said, "I know, I'll give you a raise." Nanling nodded with satisfaction. "That's right, this is the point. A gentleman loves money and gets it in a proper way." He felt that he was such a gentleman. He suddenly remembered something and said, "By the way, I made you a gun too." Then he took out the Gauss rifle he made for Mo from the weapon cabinet. The gun body of this gun is slightly longer, and it looks like an old-fashioned rifle. It only has a single-shot function, but the Gaussian magnetic field is extremely strong, and the power of a single-shot bullet is also extremely strong. Nanling said, "Well, there is also this one, they are a set." As he said that, he found a short alloy blade and inserted it into the muzzle of the gun, making it a blade gun. Mo took the blade gun with some surprise, and just shook the gun blade, and found it quite handy. And the posture of holding the blade gun with one hand was surprisingly heroic. She then realized something and said, "Are you tailor-making a weapon for me?" Nanling said embarrassedly, "I won't be so arrogant, but I think your ability will be very suitable for Gaussian weapons, and you are good at swordsmanship, so I thought about whether the two weapons can be combined. I'm just daydreaming. If you think it's not suitable, I will change it for you now." Mo was slightly stunned, and then shook his head and said, "Don't worry, let me try it." The electromagnetic control of the Thunder system is indeed an ability that can theoretically bring out the maximum power of Gaussian weapons. She accepted Nanling's gift, although she didn't say whether she liked it or not. She just joined the battling front and played with Fanny. That's right, this battlefield can only be said to be a real game for these two ladies. P.S. Today's update stops here, and the normal 6,000 words per day will be updated at the usual time. Chapter 84. Being a caring brother, Mo gradually fell in love with the blade gun in her hand, mainly because her ability could strengthen the magnetic field in the gun, and then one shot could shoot a straight line through all the enemies in the two-headed insect swarm. It looked super cool. Then the others were brought back by the drone one after another. Xiaonan. Li Jimao flicked over and landed on Nanling's shoulder, pressing Nanling's shoulder so hard that he almost fell to the ground. After all, this cat weighed 50 or 60 kilograms and jumped directly from a high altitude. Nanling struggled to climb up from his windowsill, looked at the cat with a human head and said, "Aunt Liji, you'll kill someone." Liji turned her head away proudly, and then said, "Stop talking nonsense, what should I do?" Nanling gave her the control of all the robots without saying a word, and then said, "Let the reserve team stay in the dock and wait for orders. Only when the ammunition of the robots in front is exhausted can they be replaced." Liji waved her paw impatiently and said, "I know, now hurry up and pour me a drink, I'm thirsty." This was because she was annoyed with him. Nanling was speechless for a while, and he asked, "Can you drink in this body?" Liji said, "It's okay to taste it." Nanling poured her a glass of sparkling juicy mixed, as a treat for her. Then he saw the cat with a human head lying on its back on his windowsill, and then held the cup with its two paws and poured the drink into its mouth. Just hearing the sound of gurgling, not long after, a line of water appeared under the belly of the cat, and the drink was urinated out almost intact. To be honest, if Liji was a beautiful woman and did this, it would definitely be vulgar and annoying. But now, it actually looks very interesting. Of course, just ignore the horror attribute of the human-headed cat. Nanling said helplessly, "It seems that I still need to add a digestive system when I repair your prosthesis." Liji shook her head quickly and said, "Why do you want that? It's expensive and not practical. Do you want me to poop every day?" Nanling was speechless and a little disgusted, and then decided to ignore this vulgar guy. However, at this time, Fana suddenly came to the side and said, "In fact, we can make a small fusion reactor and use everything we eat as fuel for the fusion reaction, so there will be no excrement." Nanling looked at him speechlessly. This young lady actually took up such a vulgar topic. Liji was not grateful at all. She said, "It's good to install such a thing in your body, but so much energy must be output, right? Does this require me to find a place to vent all the time?" Fanny thought this was indeed a problem, and then said, "Well, you can change to a high-powered body." Liji's face moved, and then said, "I don't have that money." Indeed, rich people have 10,000 ways to solve the problem of shitting, but poor people can only shit honestly and wipe their butts. Nanling saw that she was in a bad mood and said quickly, "When we have money, I will help you get a body like this." Liji's expression improved a little. Then she was stunned for a moment, and her eyes looked more friendly when she looked at Nanling. This feeling of a real family almost made her fall. Fana didn't have much feeling. She leaned against Nanling's window as if ordering a drink at the bar. "Give me something to drink, I'm a little thirsty." Nanling was about to get the juice specially provided by the eldest lady. As a result, Fana pointed to the big can of sparkling juice he had prepared earlier and said, "Don't bother with that. Just this. I want to try something more exciting." Nanling looked at Fana and unexpectedly found that she licked her lips subconsciously, looking eager to try. Well, this young lady had obviously completely liberated her nature, so much so that she wanted to try things that she would not have tried before. He just poured Fana a glass of sparkling juice, as a treat for the boss, and did not mention paying. Fana took it and gulped it down, then opened her mouth and burped, which was very unladylike. Mo, who was walking next to her, felt that she couldn't bear to watch. But Fana said happily, "It's so refreshing, so why is there no market for this kind of drink? I couldn't find a place to drink it before." Nanling said, "It's very simple to mix. Boss, you can buy a piece of equipment and make it yourself in the future." Fana didn't care much when she heard it, and said, "It's okay, just stay with me in the future." She ran away again, took some more magazines and went to have fun. Nanling thought it was just an unintentional remark and didn't take it too seriously. Mo came to him with her blade spear, with a complicated expression, as if she wanted to preach something but didn't know what to say. "What do you want?" he asked, like a bartender. Mo suddenly said with some relief, "Okay, give me another glass of your sparkling juice, it's quite delicious." Nanling then poured Mo a glass. She also took a deep breath like Fanny, but she didn't burp directly. She just put down the cup and said, "It's been such a long time, and I just realized a problem for the first time. Am I too harsh on Fanny?" Nanling poured some more juice for Mo and said, "I only saw that you have been helping her. Mo said, "Of course, I am Fanny's follower." But she paused and said, "It's just that I just realized that as Fanny's follower, I should work hard for Fanny's smile, instead of trying to make her become what she doesn't want." She was a little depressed, and it seemed that this realization didn't make her very happy. However, what was surprising was that she was willing to share this kind of thoughts with Nanling. It was obvious that she really trusted him and regarded him as a true friend. Nanling listened silently this time and didn't do anything extra or say anything extra, because he knew it was not appropriate for him to say more. However, at this moment, his gaseous perception, which had been turned on, suddenly brought him some information. His expression froze, and he reached out and flicked Li Jimao, who was slacking off beside him, and said, "Hurry up and get the iron guards in the dock to go deep inside, there's a problem there." Li Ji woke up in shock and hurried to operate. Then she said in surprise, "A tunnel has been dug out in this mountain, and a large number of two-headed worms are rushing out of the tunnel." Mo also said with a serious expression, "I have sealed the inner cabin. The two-headed worms that have entered the mountain will at most enter the outer cabin through the cracks in the outer cabin. We will clean them up later." As she said that, she quickly called out to the communication group, "Leave the outer enemies to Li Ji and the robots, and everyone else come to the dock to clean up the invading two-headed worms." Now, everyone had to get busy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 85 Sudden Bad Luck. The dock is full of sophisticated production equipment, which cannot be destroyed by the crude iron guards in the battle, otherwise it will be very troublesome to repair. Therefore, the group can only bring more sophisticated combat robots to fight street battles in the dock, and Li Ji played a big role in this. Because the troops on the Zhuoxia side are basically commanded by Li Ji. She alone controls thousands of robots, not only arranging the outer defense, but also carefully controlling the street battles in the dock. Although there is AI Zhuoxia's assistance, Nanling always feels that Li Ji's computing power has been improved a lot, and the thinking ability of the brain is also improving. In fact, this opportunity should be when Li Ji suddenly woke up in the hyperspace before. Not only did she wake up, she also relied on the super brain to control her body to carry out hyperspace activities. This means that her brain development has entered a new realm, and the utilization rate of the brain has also been greatly improved. This is a good thing, and Nanling is happy for her aunt Li Ji. Compared with the increasingly brilliant Li Ji, Lao Mu and the two who have also completed the super brain transformation seem to be dwarfed. After all, they are just ordinary people. Even if they try to improve their social class, they can only be ordinary middle-class people. Facing countless two-headed worms around them, even if they are fully armed with combat armor and weapons in their hands, they seem to be at a loss, and they don't know what to do in the battle. The super brain can help them analyze the battle situation at the fastest speed, but their own brains can't keep up with this speed. They want to do something, but their inner timidity makes them dare not do more. In the end, they can only find a relatively safe place with weapons and fully armed, that is, close to the side of the spacecraft for self-protection. Even if there is super brain-assisted shooting, because of their overly panicked actions, this auxiliary shooting function is better than nothing, and a large number of shots fall into the air and do useless work. The two of them are very limited in helping this chaotic battle, and it can even be said that it is better than nothing. In contrast, Deng Xiaoshu and Taoqi, the two white feather soldiers, are different. They all use intelligence cores. The number of robots they control may not be that many, but their control over robots is extremely precise. In addition, their combat skills, which have been tempered by the flames of war, are worthy at the title of elite. It seems that Lao Mu and his team still have a lot to do to stabilize their ranks, at least they can't stop improving themselves. Fanny was a little addicted to playing the real-person game and had completely forgotten everything. At this time, Mo had already gone to the deepest part of the dock, wanting to see what was going on with the passage dug by the two-headed worm. "Xiaonan, the dock is left to you," she ordered. Nanling could only accept his fate. In fact, his gas perception is indeed the most suitable for commanding the overall situation. "Watch the house for me, there are a lot of supplies here," he ordered, and seeing Li Ji yawning and waving her cat claws, he jumped out of his windowsill. Then he twisted his waist and spun, and he was like a hurricane, wrapped in the swirling airflow and flew to the top deck of the Zhuoxia. This action is very interesting, as if it means that he has the ability to fly. But he clearly didn't learn any flying spells. However, when Nanling's wind control technique reached LV9, flying with the wind really became a very simple thing. He almost instinctively let the wind set off his weight, and his whole person seemed to be integrated into the wind. So Nanling felt that many spells might be the learning methods that experienced people like him figured out. Just the LV9 wind control technique can reach this level, and I wonder what the LV10 wind control technique will be like. Nanling is quite looking forward to it, but I don't know if there are more levels above LV10. At this time, he stood on the deck of the Zhuoxia, and the gaseous perception had covered the entire scene. He didn't need to do anything, just add the situation he sensed through the gaseous perception to the battlefield information controlled by Zhuoxia, and naturally there were people who read this battlefield information to respond. Fanny was a little tired of playing street fighting on the ground for a while, so she simply turned over and jumped up, and fired a gun next to Nanling. Nanling noticed that the bullets she fired were actually carrying scorching flames. Was this a flame enchantment on the bullets? Fanny said, "Look at your ignorant look. The real high-end weapons actually have to return to the ranks of kinetic weapons. After all, kinetic weapons are the best carriers. Energy weapons are very good and convenient, but their power is determined by their size. In fact, they are not suitable for high-end individual combat equipment." The boss's explanation was very reasonable. Nanling listened to it and felt that he had gained more useful knowledge. But at this moment, he suddenly found that there were gravels falling on his head. Fanny's spiritual consciousness was stronger. She had already looked up, and then threw Nanling to the side under Nanling's inexplicable gaze, avoiding the two-headed worm that swooped down from the dome rock wall. Puff Nanling spit out a mouthful of blood, and 4 ribs were broken. Because Fanny's chest armor was very prominent, and he was too confident and didn't wear his hurricane inner armor. Moreover, the power of a Jin and strongman's pounce. This is very annoying. He was really confident and felt that those bugs could not hurt him at all. As a result, he was thrown down by his boss and was crushed by the chest armor of D. "It's not bad, I saved you, you're welcome." Fanny was quite proud, just glanced at Nanling's chest with obvious small pits on both sides, showing a slightly embarrassed expression. Then she said in a good manner, "Well, you can go for a recuperation later, just pay on my account." Nanling covered his chest with a look of bad luck, but he was in a good mood and felt that he had earned it. If he could get such a reward, it would not matter if the boss pressed him a few more times. With this recovery and recuperation, I guess he can directly complete the 9th level of Ki refining. But he felt that he had some difficulty breathing, and then coughed up blood more severely. After an internal examination, he found that his ribs had been poked into the lung tube. Oh, it was very painful and melancholy, and his consciousness was a little fuzzy. Fanny probably felt that she was not doing well, and she started to call for help in a panic. Mo was observing the tunnel where the two-headed one appeared. Hearing this, he could only let Li Ji control the robot to support it here, and then return to Fanny to clean up her ass. Mo was shocked to see Nanling's miserable appearance, she said. "How did he become like this?" Fanny avoided the question. "I will go to find the source of these two-headed worms. They actually came out of the mountain. Maybe our ship hit the worm nest when it landed." Then she fled in embarrassment. Mo looked at Nanling, who still had obvious D-dents on his chest, and felt that he was too unlucky. So she hurriedly helped Nanling back to the medical room of Zhuoxia, and even helped him to take off his clothes without caring about the difference between men and women, and then threw him into the recuperation cabin. Injected him with nutrient solution, and simply started a recovery and recuperation. Nanling's mind was not clear at this time, and he just remembered that he had suffered a terrible attack. Damn it, how could he be so unlucky? The next time he appears in front of Fanny, he must be fully armed. Chapter 86 Let's raise your salary. Nanling spent the rest of the battle in the recuperation cabin, becoming the only wounded soldier on the Zhuoxia in this battle. He felt miserable, but fortunately, the recovery and recuperation quickly repaired his internal and external injuries, not only pulling him back from the fragile near-death state of flesh and blood life, but also taking the opportunity to practice, and completely consolidated and perfected his 9th level Ki refining cultivation. This can be considered a blessing in disguise. When the recuperation was about to end, Nanling stopped practicing and began to be active in the hyperspace active group. He said, "How is the situation? Have those two-headed worms been repelled?" Fanny did not say anything, obviously feeling guilty. Mo did not say anything either. After a while, Li Ji saw that no one really paid attention to him, so she said, "The battle outside is still going on, but the situation in the dock has stabilized." because Fanny found that the tunnel in the mountain seems to lead to an underground insect nest, so she attracted the attention of the two-headed worms in the mountain. Nanling was stunned. It was time for recuperation. He quickly climbed out of the recuperation cabin, looked at the clothes torn into strips around him, and said with tears in his eyes, "My best piece of clothing is gone." Only then did Mo speak. "There is a set of uniforms of the ancient domain crew next to you, did you see it?" Nanling looked at it and indeed saw a dark red uniform with gold threads. He was a little surprised, and felt that Sister Mo was really thoughtful. He said, "Thank you, I saw it." He didn't have any pretentious thoughts. After all, he knew that his situation must have been bad at the time. He forced himself to ignore the fact that he had been seen naked by Mo. Well, there was nothing to be pretentious about. He hurriedly put on his clothes, and then learned his lesson and immediately put on the hurricane inner armor again. Patting his chest and feeling the qualified defense of the hurricane inner armor, he breathed a sigh of relief and walked out. "Did you find anything in the insect nest?" he asked. At this time, Fanny suddenly cheered and said, "I caught it." "Guess what I caught?" Liji immediately said, "I can't guess, but I know it must be very serious, because the two-headed worms outside went crazy all of a sudden and rushed over here like crazy. Fanny, I advise you to kill the thing quickly, otherwise I'm afraid something will happen." Mo also agreed, "Sister Liji is right, Fanny, you must kill the thing." However, Fanny only gave a picture, which was a thing that was jet white and looked like a hairless piglet. Although it was only half the length of a person, the tail hanging behind it was very long, about 2 meters. This thing looked pitiful and very docile, but when it was locked up in a cage by Fanny and carried away, all the two-headed worms went crazy. Nanling took a deep breath and said, The king worm was caught by Boss Fanny like this." His expression was a little dull, but his thoughts had already slid in another direction. What kind of luck is Fanny? Then he suddenly shuddered. He hurriedly ran outside and found Mo standing at the entrance of the tunnel waiting for Fanny to come back. "You are well, why don't you take a rest?" Mo looked a little unnatural, but fortunately, she couldn't see her expression because of the mask. Nanling didn't have the mind to worry about the little ambiguity at this time, and just asked, "Boss Fanny's luck, doesn't it need a sacrifice?" Mo was stunned, and then fell silent for a while. Finally, she said to Nanling, "You should have heard how Miss Fenyi called Fanny." It was a little roundabout, and it seemed that she didn't want to say the 3 words unlucky and I herself. Nanling covered her face with one hand and said, "I understand, it probably means that when you go out with Boss Fanny, someone will always be unlucky." Mo sighed melancholy and said, "You see, I don't want to master so much knowledge, but when I'm with Fanny, I really don't know and I will use it." Nanling looked at Mo in surprise, and a question was suppressed in his stomach without asking, "How did you survive until now?" That's right, if Fanny really has this kind of attribute that makes people around her unlucky, then he has to run away quickly, and he must stay as far away from this unlucky woman as possible. However, at this time, Mo saw through his thoughts and advised him with a slight hesitation. In fact, you don't have to be so panic, because the kind of misfortune is generally not fatal as long as it is handled properly, and as long as you can survive it, it will be beneficial to you in turn. Just like this time, Nanling interrupted silently. "It was Sister Mo who was kind enough to save me. If it was someone else, I would have died." Although he expressed his gratitude and praise for Mo, his intention to keep a distance was already very obvious. He decided in his heart that after this mission was over, he should say goodbye to these 2 ladies. Mo actually tried to persuade her reluctantly, "You don't have to worry so much. Fanny just loves to make trouble. The trouble she makes is basically within the controllable range." Nanling sighed and said, "I understand, but now that I have come to this point, I have something to say to Sister Mo." He said sincerely and melancholy, "In fact, I know nothing about my life experience. I only know that the secret of my life experience is hidden on Chinyuan 06, so I think I still have to go back to Chinyuan 06 to solve the mystery of my life experience." Nonsense. If he was born and raised in this era, he would definitely have thoughts about such things. But he traveled through time, so who cares? Mo seemed to understand something, and nodded slightly without saying anything. It seemed that he understood that Nanling could not be saved. However, Nanling unexpectedly received a system prompt at this time. "Received a new contract, please ask the user whether to sign." Nanling took a look at the content of the contract, and it turned out to be Juxia Xianzhao's employment contract for him, but the annual salary was suddenly raised from less than 200,000 to 300,000. He stood there in a daze, and when he reacted, he found that the new contract had been signed. Damn it, he didn't control his thoughts. Nanling despised himself in his heart, thinking that he shouldn't be such a greedy person. However, in reality, he had already said to Mo in a very servile way, "Dear Sister Mo, is there anything I can do for you?" Mo was speechless for a long time. Well, mainly because she suddenly felt very good now, and this familiar intimacy came back. She found that she hated Nanling's greedy look before, but now she actually felt that it seemed pretty good. Chapter 87. Bad girl behavior. Mo now feels very close to Nanling's greed for money. That's right. If you want people to take risks, you have to pay them, right? In the past, Nanling could go to a desolate planet like OB 7561 and stay there for 3 years for the pitiful salary. Now that Fanny and Mo have given him such a high salary, it is natural that he can forget those dangers. Risks and benefits are linked. If the benefits are enough for him to take risks, then of course he will not hesitate. Nanling immediately adjusted her mentality and asked, "Sister Mo, is there anything I can do for you?" Mo now felt that he should call her Sister Mo. Her expression was actually a little more upright. She raised her chin and said, "You have the most tricks. I need you to find a way to deal with Fanny and stop her from being so whimsical. I know her too well. She must want to keep that dangerous Earth King insect as a pet. You have to think of a way to dispel her idea." Nanling couldn't help but ponder. This is a bit difficult. However, at this moment, his intelligence core brought him another message prompt. He was quite surprised that the group that was prompted was actually a new one. The old lady is not in the group. What kind of new group is this? Nanling clicked in and saw that the group members were only him, Aunt Legie and Boss Fanny. Well, then it was clear who the old lady was and who created this group. And Fanny sent a message in this group. "Come and help me think about how to convince Mom and Ah. If I bring that little thing back now, I will definitely be annoyed to death by Mom and Ah. Sister Legie and Xiaonan, can you help me think of a way?" Nanling. ... He felt like a double agent. But the situation was indeed a bit anxious now, making him feel inexplicably like he was in a sure field. But from his heart, he actually wanted to keep the king insect. It's not that there is anything else, but he felt that since the king insect was sacrificed for him to have the good luck to meet, how could he kill it so easily? If you sell it, you'll definitely make a lot of money. The only thing you have to think about is who you can sell it to and how to sell it. Because she already had a bias in her heart, Nanling said, "And the old man is not in the group. Boss, I think as long as you show the right attitude, I think Sister Mo will definitely not blame you, right?" Fanny immediately responded with a complaint. "What you said is the same as not saying anything." Legie spoke for Nanling and said, "Fanny, Shonen means that you can use a legitimate reason to do what you want." Fanny was stunned for a moment, and then immediately understood. Then she spoke righteously in the work group in front of all the employees. "Everyone, this is an extraordinary discovery. You must know that this king insect rarely falls into human hands alive even in the late stage of the Nether Locust plague. This time we have discovered a target with great scientific research value." Mo was surprised. She was quite surprised. This kind of statement should not be something Fanny can say. She suspected that someone was teaching Fanny to say this. Nanling had already said in the hyperspace active group, "Boss Fanny, this thing is too dangerous. We can't even protect ourselves now. If it causes a riot of two-headed worms on the entire planet, we will also be in danger." Mo frowned slightly when she saw this, and then nodded to Nanling beside her to express her praise. This reason was correct. She felt that Nanling's advice was still very appropriate this time. However, Fanny, who had been enlightened, said this time, "It is dangerous, but I think it is still within control for the time being. We should try to solve this problem first. If we can't solve it, then we can talk about killing this king worm. It always feels too bad to kill it like this." Mo fell silent. She felt that she was convinced. In fact, as long as Fanny didn't make the decision because of her nonsense, how could she object? So Mo said with emotion, "I didn't expect you to think so much this time. Well, then, we will definitely try our best to control the situation." Mo looked at Nanling and said, "Now your job has changed, let's think about how to meet Fanny's requirements." Nanling nodded seriously, and he was a little relieved in his heart. The unity of the Vuoxia really depends on him. Mo was the first to put forward the view. "I can detect that these two-headed worms need some kind of biological electric waves to connect and communicate. I can try to interfere with this kind of electric waves." Nanling was a little surprised when she heard it. She didn't expect Mo to have this function. In fact, Mo is very sensitive to electric waves and magnetic fields. She quickly found the trick and experimented on a two-headed worm. She simulated similar electric waves and immediately put the two-headed worm into a state of confusion. It seemed to not know what to do all of a sudden. Sometimes it rushed around, and sometimes it stopped and didn't move, as if it was completely crazy. Mo kept adjusting the electric waves in this frequency band, and finally found a certain frequency that could drive away all these two-headed worms. This seems to be a frequency band that can cause great discomfort and fear. Mo nodded with satisfaction and said, "Have you recorded the frequency band just now? I think with your ability, you should be able to make an instrument based on it to disperse these two-headed worms." Nanling nodded repeatedly and said, "Sister Mo is very talented. You have already pointed out the direction for me. It is certainly not difficult to do it again." He then thought for a while and said, "But to be on the safe side, do we also have to make a cage that can completely shield this kind of biological radio wave transmission?" Mo nodded and said, "This is inevitable. Let's make preparations for both situations. Make the equipment and the cage together." Nanling did it immediately after hearing it. Soon, some standard circuit systems were taken out of the warehouse and assembled in the way he needed. At the same time, some special materials were used to make a translucent glass cage, which is the most suitable material for isolation that can be made by current human metaphysical technology. Before Nanling's instrument was ready, Fanna had already appeared at the entrance of the tunnel with the king worm. Behind her, countless two-headed worms chased after her desperately, but unfortunately they were all blocked by combat robots. When Fanna saw Mo waiting for her here, she shrank her neck. But then she saw Nanling behind Mo winking at her. She immediately coughed and asked, "How is it? Do you have any good ideas?" Mo didn't say anything, but took out the translucent glass cover that had been prepared and said, "You can put it in here and try." Fanna didn't say anything either, and did it obediently. The king insect was put into the cover, and then Mo thought about it and pasted a sealing paper talisman on it. Nanling felt a little stupid when he saw it, and he didn't expect to see the paper talisman appear. And it was at the moment when the paper talisman was pasted, all the two-headed insects showed a blank look, as if they had lost their target at once. "It works," Fanna said happily. "It has to be you, Mo." Mo also seemed very happy. However, Nanling received a private message. "It has to be you, only you can deal with this guy Mo. Trash, it's really a scumbag." Nanling despised her scumbag female boss, but there was nothing she could do. Who made her rich? Chapter 88. Starting to grow a brain. The two-headed worms finally retreated because they could not sense the signal of the king worm, and were also dispersed by the radio wave intimidation device made by Mo and Nanling. This battle lasted almost a day and a night, and everyone was a little tired. Fanny was in high spirits because she had a great time that day and achieved her goal. Except for being a little embarrassed when facing Nanling, who was attacked by her chest, she was still very happy overall. "Xiaonan, you have worked hard this time. Next, you should have a good rest. I will give you 3 days off," she said cheerfully. It must be said that Nanling really needs this vacation to improve his cultivation. He has now perfected the 9th level of Ki refining and can enter the 10th level of Ki refining at any time. After the 10th level of Ki refining, he can try to build a foundation. Building a foundation is the stage where the cultivators of this era can really rise. Just look at Mo's performance. She seems to be able to do everything with ease. He returned to his room and originally wanted to retrieve directly, but found that the portholes here were not installed. It would be too dangerous to retrieve here. So he simply spent half a day controlling the robot to repair his room, and then adjusted his state to prepare for the improvement of realm. When he was recovering and recuperating, he had used the nutrient solution to accelerate the cultivation of the 9th level. Although the 9th level was perfect, it was still a little short of breaking through to the 10th level like a normal person. This was actually a problem for him, mainly because the inner vision provided by the auxiliary instrument could no longer accurately find the location of the acupoints in the body. Because the auxiliary instrument existed in his blood vessels in the form of a nanorobot, it could detect his whole body along with the vascular network. The 12 meridians, the 8 extraordinary meridians, and the acupoints of the internal organs were fine, because they were all places where blood and Ki flowed, and the auxiliary instrument could naturally help him see the inner vision. However, the hidden acupoints in the body outside the circulation of Ki and blood were not within its perception range. At the same time, there was no bottleneck in the cultivation of the 10th level of Ki refining. The difficulty was how to find the hidden acupoints in the body without the help of the auxiliary instrument, and then open and refine them. To be honest, there are 2 simplest and crudest methods. First, replace a higher level auxiliary instrument. Use smaller and more robots to observe the body more comprehensively, so as to achieve an effect close to true inner vision. Second, it is to directly fill the body with spiritual power, completely fill the body and the outside with spiritual energy, and then naturally open the mind under the immersion of excessive spiritual power. These are all rich people's ways of playing. Ordinary people can only accumulate spiritual power continuously to the extent of filling the whole body. Then, these hidden acupoints will naturally have some spiritual power leaking into them under the immersion of spiritual power, and after accumulating to a certain extent, they will be discovered or opened naturally by the cultivators. Nanling is not a rich man, but he does not want to proceed step by step in the way of ordinary people. So he figured out an unexpected method, which is also a method of using the constant power of the wisdom core. His spiritual power cannot fill the whole body, which means that it cannot fill the whole body at the current concentration. But what if he dilutes these spiritual powers? Diluting one's own spiritual power is definitely an extremely extraordinary practice in the eyes of normal cultivators, because what is the difference between this and dispersing power? Spiritual power can only be preserved because of gathering. If he rashly disperses it, it would be a minor matter to go astray. But Nanling had his own trick, which was to use the constant power of the wisdom core to constantly bless the gathering force, and then his own will was above the constant power of the wisdom core, exerting the dispersion force. In this way, his spiritual power continued to disperse in his Danten Qi, slowly expanding his whole body. But this dispersion is not dissipation. Because the dispersion force exerted by Nanling's will only act on his own body, these spiritual powers have not yet dispersed outside the body, and because they have lost the will to disperse, they are immediately gathered by the gathering of the constant force. So the spiritual power in Nanling's body formed a very interesting state, starting from the Qi from the inside to the outside, and the spiritual power went from being scattered and thin to condensed and refined. It can be said that his spiritual power was spread all over his body in an instant. And his will also spread to his whole body along with the spiritual power, and finally formed a kind of inner vision of the spiritual power perspective. This may be the real inner vision. Nanling lacks the feeling of being in control of everything. In fact, this spiritual power perspective is not clear, he just reflects a vague concept in his mind. But with his control and perception of spiritual power, the convergence of multiple information can bring him a clearer and more intuitive understanding. So he saw that when his whole body was full of spiritual power, there seemed to be cracks in some places, and there was a faint spiritual power penetrating from those cracks. This is the hidden acupoint. After finding the location, he began to actively control it. Refined spiritual power does not necessarily have a good effect at this time. The diluted spiritual power can penetrate into the acupoint little by little, and then quickly condense and gather under the interference of his will. That is, his spiritual power that can be dispersed and gathered and can be fully controlled can do this. Otherwise, those spiritual powers that are not condensed enough will fall into these gaps and be lost. In this way, Nanling can warm and stretch these hidden acupoints from the inside to the outside little by little until the spiritual power is unobstructed. The acupoints on the surface of the body are actually very useful, because closing them can prevent the leakage of one's own essence, that is, it can close one's own human magnetic field. Opening them can directly absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth without breathing, and then refine it into one's own spiritual power. Therefore, the 10th level of Qi refining is extremely important, because it is the beginning of the mysterious connection between the human body and the outside world. Of course, because of the spiritual furnace, the improvement of this realm is not so obvious for the growth of the cultivator's strength. In this process, Nanling also felt a real improvement from the level of life. He felt that the secrets in his body were being opened quickly, his internal organs were becoming stronger, and the circulation of body fluids in his body was completely opened, making him feel that his body was light and his physical strength increased greatly. In particular, he felt that his brain was also supplied with more nutrients, making him feel like he was growing a brain. In terms of data, his brain computing power increased by nearly 30% in a short period of time. He found a very interesting phenomenon, that is, the improvement of mechanical computing power often takes several times or even dozens of times to see a significant difference. But his brain is improved by only 30%, but it feels so different from before. His memory is stronger, his comprehension is stronger, and he can now look at difficult subjects without any problem. It feels so good to become smarter all of a sudden. Of course, Nanling knows that this kind of improvement should be available to everyone who has reached this level. After all, this is the path to physical strengthening in this era. He is just looking forward to what kind of scenery he will see when he reaches the end of this road. Chapter 89 I Love Apples and Fish. After 3 days, Nanling finally found all the hidden acupoints in his body, and then opened the warming and nourishing. In this way, he has officially entered the realm of the 10th level of ki refining. However, after these opened acupoints are warmed up, he still has to continue to accumulate. Because according to the normal steps, you must first accumulate enough before you can try to open these acupoints. In that way, once the acupoints are opened, his accumulation is in place, and it won't take long to start trying to build a foundation. But now he opened the acupoints with his own operation. If the accumulation is not enough, it is not enough. After breaking through the realm, he still has to go back and continue to accumulate. But now even if it is only the warming and nourishing stage, its effect has been reflected. With the opening of the acupoints around him, the spiritual energy can be operated according to the most perfect running channel of the ki refining period of Xuanfeng, which greatly increases the speed of his spiritual power refining. This can be regarded as getting twice the result with half the effort. Nanling always thought that if he were placed in ancient times with his intelligence and wisdom, he would be a genius in cultivation. Unfortunately, he came to this era, and he was beaten by the rich with scientific and technological resources anyway. No matter how smart and intelligent you are, you can only catch up but cannot make up. Anyway, you'll soon build your foundation, and by then you can barely catch up with Mo's cultivation, right? Nanling thought so in his heart and came out of retreat. At the same time, he sent a message in a hyperspace active group. I'm out of retreat. Has anything interesting happened recently? Li Ji was always the first to respond to him. No big deal, just daily ship repairs. Since we caught the White Pit, it has been very peaceful. Nanling asked. White Pit? Mo said faintly. That's the name Fana gave to the king insect. It was clearly agreed that it would be used for research. Why do I feel like she is raising it as a pet? She suspected that she was being scumbag. Nanling immediately popped up a group notification. When he saw the group name, why is it called Tigress does not show her power? Wait, this group was previously called Old Mom is not here, right? Well, now you don't need to look to know who sent the message. EA01 naught pounds. OJ. 1. 6 equals L. YHWFN. 6 L. Equals 4S. Equals IS. SA1 now. Add Y1 EOYHMC naught. Nanling also loaded the data package and immediately read all the information provided by Li Ji. Then he said. These two-headed worms are getting weaker, not only physically, but also psychologically. Mo said. It is obvious that they rely on the existence of the king worm to survive. Now that the king worm has been captured and completely sealed by us, it means that these two-headed worms have completely lost their main brain. They are losing their life resilience, just like the nether locusts that human ancestors encountered when they were exploring the starry sky tens of thousands of years ago. Fanny interrupted at this time. Does that mean that after a while, there will be only us left on this planet? Mo confirmed. The two-headed worms will self-destruct, and we will become the real masters of this planet. It's a pity that all traces of the original civilization on this planet have been erased, otherwise it would be another kind of harvest. What should we do at this planet, Fanny? This is the correct answer. This planet is extremely valuable. Not only can it be easily transformed into an administrative planet or a tourist planet, but it can also conduct research on a new type of dark matter. Its selling price can definitely exceed that of the colorful disk galaxy. Fana said nonchalantly, any opinions? Mo obviously had something in mind. She said, there are two options. One is to continue to let Miss Fenyi handle it, and the other is to directly list it online for sale. Fanny almost said without thinking, it's already very difficult for Fenman Man to take over a color disk system. If she takes over Pluto system, with her procrastinating nature, when will she be able to make a profit? Anyway, if we want to completely own the Pluto system, we must upload its detailed information on the Star Network for registration, and it will definitely attract other people's attention at the time. It's better to be straightforward and list it on the Star Network, and then pay for the goods. This is indeed Fanny's character. Mo also agreed with this. The value of such a planet is definitely not something Fenyi can afford, and because of the current hostility with the Feng family of Chenyuan 06, it is obviously not appropriate to directly seek a deal with them. The only problem is that this planet is not far from Chenyuan 06. Wouldn't it be provocative to complete the transaction in this way? Mo would not care about this situation. She was also angry. So what if she was provocative? Who told you, the people of Chinyuan 06, to be so unkind first? Nanling looked around to see if there was any work he needed to do. It turned out that everything was on track. Under the control of Xiaoxia, the AI of Xiaoxia, all the robots in the dock area were working on their own according to the engineering plan set by Mo. Only when an unexpected situation occurred would human brain intervention be needed for judgment. The whole process was smooth and efficient, and the progress of the repair was also carried out in full accordance with the set construction period. Because the damage to the hull was too serious, the internal structure of the hull to be repaired first had to be completed in half a year, and the repair of the outer shell was faster, adding up to a total of about 8 months. After all this time, Fanna didn't need to approve his vacation at all, and he was now too idle to do anything. Nanling was a little helpless, and then he thought it was good, just in time to accumulate some experience. So he quickly flipped through the inventory on the spaceship, and then exchanged a large bottle of juice, and then pumped it up to make it into sparkling juice. He already felt happy. But he felt that it was a bit monotonous to always drink sparkling juice. It was a pity that Miss Fanny didn't like alcoholic beverages, otherwise he could enjoy it with her. But when he was taking inventory of the supplies, he found some full-sized fruits. Yes, apples. He looked at the records and found that this was something Mo specifically asked to be added to the shopping list. So Mo also likes to eat apples. Thinking of this, he looked at the empty wasteland outside the porthole of his room, and suddenly he had a bold idea. It would be a pity not to grow something on such good land. Chapter 90. Using public property for personal purposes. Nanling is a person who can't sit still. He went to Mo to eat the remaining apple core, but was chased out by Mo, who was a wretched man with ulterior motives. He had no choice but to spend his own money to buy an apple. After eating it in a few bites, he found 4 seeds and buried them directly in the soil outside his porthole. Then he realized a problem. It seems that it takes a long time for this apple tree to produce fruit. According to the normal growth cycle of apple trees, he has to wait for 3 to 5 years before he can eat apples. He was at a loss for a moment, and then immediately retrieved the information about apple planting in the database. Then he fell into deep entanglement. Of course, there is a way to accelerate the growth of apple trees. Just give them enough nutrients and add some technological means to catalyze them. But, those things cost a lot. Nanling couldn't help but hesitate, but when he thought that he had already spent money to buy an apple, wouldn't it be a loss if there was no effect? Moreover, he could just buy the drawings of key equipment and make the things himself, which would be much cheaper and add a skill to himself, the best of both worlds. He convinced himself and exchanged for a device blueprint of a cell proliferation instrument. After he exchanged it, he found that this device can not only be used to grow apples, but also to grow anything else. The most important thing is that it can also be used to heal injuries. In fact, it can be said to be a bankrupt and reduced version of the convalescent cabin. The learning difficulty is quite high, but it is not difficult at all. Then he exchanged some nutrient solution, mixed it according to the formula, and poured it on the apple tree seeds he planted. These nutrient solutions are very useful and have the effect of accelerating their reproduction. When he poured the nutrient solution, green sprouts had already emerged on the ground after just one night. It was really a novelty to see green sprouts on this desolate planet. Then Nanling pondered for a while, and suddenly opened Mo's private chat. I want to apply for a batch of materials to trial produce medical equipment. Mo asked. What? She was a little wary, mainly because Nanling's performance in rummaging through the trash can in her room before was really alarming. How could he look at this as a pervert? Nanling said. I think it's a waste that our medical room only has a recuperation cabin. Although the recuperation cabin can indeed cure all diseases, it seems to be an overkill to use the medical cabin for some minor injuries. So I plan to study how to make a cell proliferation instrument and add some conventional treatment methods to our ship. Mo instinctively felt that Nanling was cheating funds. But who can blame Nanling for this? She sighed and said, Okay, I'll approve it for you, but I have to see the finished product. Also, you should also repair Sister Liji's prosthesis. Her injury is a work-related injury. I will give you 120% of the quota for repairs. You can upgrade Sister Liji with the extra part. Nanling nodded immediately after hearing this and said, Sister Mo is righteous. He was happy. He pulled Liji's damaged prosthesis over the day, and he instantly had multiple transformation plans in his mind. He felt that Liji's prosthesis had too many useless functions, so why not just transform it into the ultimate weapon girl? However, Liji was supervising beside him, so he couldn't do anything. The buttocks and chest guns were already the limit. If she did anything out of the ordinary, she would probably tickle Nanling to death. There was no other way, so Nanling could only install a unique prosthetic digestive system for her according to Liji's request, so that she could enjoy food like normal people from now on. And this digestive system would not let her defecate and urinate like normal people, but would extract the bioenergy in the food as much as possible, and then refine the residue into black carbon rods and discharge it. It was quite delicate. Liji was very pleased with her new digestive function, so her daily appetite increased greatly, which made Nanling worried about the consumption of supplies. According to Liji's eating method, Laomu and others would soon have to eat emergency food to survive. The best thing is that she can eat as much as she wants without getting fat. Just like at this moment, Liji was holding a piece of scallion pancake and eating happily. This caused Nanling to complain. If you keep eating like this, you'll spend all the hard-earned wages. Liji said. So I have already downgraded my consumption. I can only buy some flour from you. Fortunately, you are capable. You can make delicious food with flour alone. She looked at Nanling, who was carefully assembling an instrument, and asked, "What is this you made? I see you have been working on this recently. Is it important?" Nanling said, "This is a cell proliferation instrument. You can't use it, but it is still very useful for us who are still flesh and blood." Liji's super brain immediately searched for the information of this instrument and said clearly, "Medical equipment, it is very important. I just didn't expect you to be such a hard-working person." In her opinion, Nanling was doing it completely for the sake of Eudoxia. At this time, Nanling completed the final assembly. It was a box that looked like a 40x60 bag. It was not heavy and could be carried directly on the back. This is the main body of the cell proliferation instrument, and the excitation device is a pistol connected to the box with a pipeline. The pistol emits a white beam of light, which can stimulate the cells in the target's body to accelerate proliferation, thereby quickly recovering from injuries or something else. "Okay, I'll ask Mo to come and check the goods first." Liji shrugged, and then quickly stuffed the scallion pancake into her mouth, as if she was afraid that Mo would come and snatch the food from her. Mo walked in quickly. But this time she was not wearing combat uniforms, but fitness clothes. It seemed that she was in the gym just now. Nanling suddenly felt itchy. He hadn't been to the gym for a while, and it was time to sweat. "Is this the cell proliferation instrument you made?" "It's a little different from what I thought," Mo said. Then her eyes flashed and said, "You made it portable. Are you going to take it to the battlefield?" Nanling nodded and said, "Because I think what is really valuable is the first-time treatment on the battlefield. It may be able to play that greatest role on the front line of the battle." Mo said, "It can only be said that it may be useful in certain environments. After all, the attack that can tear our combat armor may not be saved by your portable battlefield treatment device. I can only say that it is barely useful." She gave her evaluation. Nanling nodded and said, "Since Sister Mo thinks it's useful, do you mind if I use it to do some experiments?" "Here it comes, his private work is coming." Mo looked at him expressionlessly and said, "You are the quartermaster. If you need these equipment temporarily, you don't need to report to me, unless there is an additional cost." Nanling smiled and said, "You have to report it." As he said that, he took the newly made cell proliferation instrument to the porthole of his room. With a thought, the porthole flicked up and opened. He added the function of opening the window when he repaired the porthole. Well, although opening a window in space is obviously a death wish, this function will be very convenient now. Then he aimed the pistol as a trigger at the small green seedling outside the window and pulled the trigger. The white beam shone on the green seedling, and it trembled visibly with the naked eye. The fertile soil, the full nutrient solution, and the light of the cell proliferation instrument made the apple seedling grow so quickly, constantly sprouting branches, and then growing taller and taller. When it grew to half a person's height, the branches had already begun to bear fruits, and the effect was truly outstanding. Chapter 91 New Discovery of Dark Matter. The 4 apple seeds planted by Nanling all grew into small trees and actually produced apples. Mo looked at this scene in surprise and suddenly felt that something was wrong. She asked, "How did you think of planting apples?" Nanling wanted to flirt with him at this time. "Because I know you like to eat them." But no, he would definitely be beaten to death, so he said, "Because there are only apples in the purchase order." Mo nodded. The apples were attacked by her. This is an ancient fruit and also a popular fruit among the upper class. Sadly, a fruit that was once very common can now only be eaten by the upper class. Even if the middle class wants to eat an apple, they have to calculate whether their income is appropriate. This is the sad reality. If people today were thrown into a native planet full of various flowers, fruits and wild animals, they would probably feel that they have come to heaven. Mo then remembered something and said, "You came to my room to look through the trash can that time, it turned out to be for this." Li Ji complained, "You went to a lady's room just to look through the trash can? You're really something." Nanling said, "Such a good land, it would be a waste not to plant something." Then he looked at the apple tree that had grown, and asked hesitantly, "Do you think the color of this apple is a little wrong?" Mo retracted her gaze from him, looked at the 4 small fruit trees, and nodded and said, "It's quite unexpected, this apple tree seems to have mutated." She didn't seem too surprised about this. Maybe in her opinion, the most strange thing is that there is no mutation in this special planetary environment. So Nanlin, Li Ji, and Mo came to the side of the 4 small trees curiously and looked at them. Li Ji's face suddenly changed and said, "My scanning equipment can't perform too comprehensive scanning on this apple or even the apple tree. They can interfere with my scanning." Nanling looked at the apple with a black gold color, and felt confused as to why he would grow such a thing. Mo said thoughtfully, "It should be caused by the influence of the dark matter here. In fact, if the 2-headed worms are not active on the opposite side and can be detected by optical detectors, otherwise it is difficult for us to detect them if they are close to each other underground. It's a pity that there are too few experimental samples to confirm it, but it can be speculated that the creatures that appear on this planet will be affected by dark matter and have a certain degree of anti-detection mutation." Nanling was a little frustrated, because he planted apples to eat, but can this apple be eaten? Crack crack, suddenly there was a chewing sound next to him. He turned his head and saw that Aunt Li Ji had picked an apple and started eating it. She was really fearless. Who told her to have an iron stomach? Li Ji swallowed the black apple in 2 or 3 bites, then savored it and said, "It tastes good. I didn't expect that I could still eat fruit in my lifetime." Nanling said, "What do you feel?" Li Ji felt it for a while, then said with a strange expression, "If you want to talk about feelings, it's that I suddenly lost contact with my stomach." Nanling said, "Impossible, the stomach I made for you is physically connected, how could it lose contact?" Li Ji said, "Well, I just can't detect the situation inside the stomach myself. What a pity, I wanted to help you analyze the ingredients, but it seems that there is no way." She paused for a moment, stretched out her hand and suddenly pulled out a black cotton rob from her waist. This is her excrement. It's quite delicate. Although it's a bit speechless to excrete in front of people, if Nanling doesn't say it, who would know? Oh, Mo also knows, from her tangled expression, it can be seen that she may be a little disgusted by this. But Li Ji was careless and had no awareness of this. She took out the cotton rod and gestured for a while and said, "It can be detected now. Is it because I reorganized its molecules? But this is not the end." Nanling designed Li Ji's digestive system personally. He knew that organic matter is mainly composed of carbon-hydrogen bonds. His way of processing is to break up the carbon-hydrogen bonds, carbon wraps other elements to form carbon rods, and hydrogen is combined with oxygen to be discharged in the form of steam. "So when Li Ji is high, she will be full of smoke and look like a fairy?" Nanling asked, "Is there any that has not been discharged?" Li Ji said, "I usually save it and use it when I need it. I find that the effect of using it as an atmosphere is really good." She paused suddenly, then showed a look of surprise and said, "I can't detect my water tank." Mo has now fully awakened and said, "Sister Li Ji, don't move. Xiaonan, quickly find a way to guide out all the water that Sister Li Ji just decomposed from eating apples." Nanling has already started to do it. Isn't it just to insert a catheter for his old aunt? Li Ji let Nanling manipulate her body with a tangled look on her face. Later, she simply popped her head out and ran away with a cat prosthesis. It was quite embarrassing. Of course, inserting a catheter was just a joke. Nanling directly took out Li Ji's water tank and studied it. Although the water tank was filled with Li Ji's urine, it was actually pure water. Why was Mo so interested in this? It was because the elemental composition of pure water was very simple. If the carrier element of this dark matter was discovered, it would be a pleasant surprise. Nanling ionized the water in the water tank again, and the answer was clear at a glance. He said, "It is hydrogen, but it is different from the 3 isotopes we know. Further research is no longer possible. It interferes with all detection of it. But one thing is certain, that is, it can participate in human metabolism like normal hydrogen." Nanling felt that this special hydrogen was harmless. This discovery made them very happy, and then put the results in the hyperspace active group and shared it with Fanna, who was playing around somewhere. As a result, Fanna said strangely, "But that's not right. If hydrogen is the carrier, why was I blocked by a piece of iron ore and I was underground? Is it the water in the iron ore vein that blocked me? No, I sampled a piece of ore, and there was not much water in it, but it still blocked my detection. I didn't expect Fanna to have a new discovery here. But she found an iron ore vein deep underground. Nanling stood up at the time. Mo also made the same move as him. They both looked at each other in surprise, and strangely felt that their ideas should be the same. They were all full of interest in this dark matter, and wanted to find out the truth, and they all had a desire to explore this world. Mo rarely smiled and said, "Don't forget to put on the armor this time, don't get hurt again." Nanling was angry on the spot, and he said, "Let's not talk about this. We are still friends." The fact that he almost died from Fanna's chest attack has become a stain on Nanling's life. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 92 Underground Discovery. A new exploration team was formed, with only Nanling and Mo. Li Ji wanted to go, but there were too many interferences underground. If she went down, she might lose control of the ground robot army, so she had to give up. But when she said goodbye, she secretly made a "come on, work hard" gesture to Nanling. Nanling felt ashamed and annoyed, and angrily sent a private message to say that Aunt Li Ji's thoughts were too filthy. Is there no pure love between men and women? Anyway, he felt that his feelings for Mo were very pure. The two quickly changed their equipment. Nanling was still wearing his Hurricane inner armor, mainly because the outer armor was not ready yet, and the funds were insufficient. Mo was also wearing her Zhao inner armor. She felt that there was no need to wear the big killer outer armor, and there was no decent threat on this planet. They went deep underground along the tunnel that Fanna had killed all the way down. This was once the nest of the Hades locust, and now it is inhabited by many two-headed insects. Although the two-headed worms should be weakening rapidly after losing their king worm, no one knows whether they will suddenly attack from the darkness somewhere in this tunnel. The interference here is huge, especially for Mo, who is good at energy sensing. Nanling is better off, because he has gaseous perception and can directly sense the movement of living things in this space. If those two-headed worms in the dark do not move, it will be fine. Once they move, they will be sensed by Nanling immediately. Their purpose this time is not to clear out the two-headed worms, so Nanling's sensing ability is enough. The walls of this underground tunnel are full of traces of melting and burning, and some places even have a glass color. This is not because they encountered the underground glass mine, but Fanna and I burned through this place when she passed by here before. There are indeed blind two-headed worms that will come on the road, but as soon as they move within Nanling's perception range, they will be swept away by the strong wind generated by the situation, making them unable to get close. Nanling can do this not because of his great progress in cultivation, but because his control over spiritual power has been improved again. There is only exquisite control here but no absolute power. As for consumption, we already have a spirit furnace, so why are we afraid of this little consumption? Mo said, "Yes, there is no useless ability. Your ability to detect is not affected by dark matter. Speaking of which, gaseous perception is a good ability. It is not just perception. I believe you have also realized that practicing it well can actually allow you to have an effect similar to the out-of-body mind in advance." This is a reminder. Nanling nodded repeatedly after hearing this. Of course he could understand this, but he only understood it after Mo said it. He said, "It would be great if the mind could observe this dark matter." Mo shook his head and said, "The reason why dark matter is because it is out of our observation range. Even if there is a mind that can observe it, it should be at least after the nascent soul stage. Yes, they have Fanny, a Jindan cultivator here, and she can't directly observe this dark matter. The tunnel is very long, but the two walked very quickly and entered the depths not long after. There is a very large underground space here, full of wild and ancient textures. It's a pity that the detector cannot be used, otherwise it would be easy to map out how huge this underground space is." However, Nanling still tried to expand the range of perception with gaseous perception, and then projected a not very detailed map in front of him. He said, "This is what I can sense. It seems huge here, but there is still space underground." Mo looked at the gas map that Nanling showed her, and looked at the wind tunnel that appeared in a corner, and realized that this was the downward passage. She said, "Okay, this looks like the part that Fanna didn't go to. Let's go to the iron ore veins you mentioned first," and she also found the king worm there. They soon came to the place where Fan had found the king worm. There didn't seem to be much special here. Nanling just asked casually, "Has the research on the king worm not started yet?" Mo said, "Fanny is watching too closely, and it's hard for me to start. In addition, if we want to study the king worm, we will inevitably release it, and then the two-headed worms here will revive again. It's better to let Fanny play with it first, and when she has had enough fun and the two-headed worms here are dead, we can start research." Nanling nodded repeatedly after listening, worthy at being the person who knows Fanny best. The iron ore vein has appeared in front of them. Although it cannot be analyzed by instruments, Nanling can judge that this iron ore vein should be of high purity. He has already stepped forward to sample the ore. Anyway, it has been confirmed that pure hydrogen atoms can be used as dark matter carriers. Can iron atoms also do this? This is easy to solve. As long as there are enough samples for purification and smelting, we can know it by getting pure iron. After completing the sampling, Nanling thought of something and said, "In fact, there is more or less dark matter in various places on this planet, even in the soil." Mo nodded. "There is no doubt about this. In fact, what we want to find is the smallest unit that is the carrier of this dark matter. The hydrogen atom we found is already very small. What we are doing now is just to provide evidence." Nanling smiled and said, "If it is smaller than the hydrogen atom, it can only be a proton." Then his and Mo's expressions changed, because it seemed to be true. This is a very important direction. To be honest, Nanling wants to go back and study this problem immediately. But since he is here, he still wants to explore deeper into this underground nest. It was a hole on the ore vein, but the fracture looked very new and had not always been there. It seemed that the collapse had just occurred not long ago. Could it be caused by the impact of the Vuoxia falling? Mo guessed. Nanling had already jumped down. There was no danger in the gaseous perception, so he seemed very decisive. However, after jumping down, they found that they seemed to have come to an underground magma riverbed. It was just that the magma river here had solidified and dried up, but the ground under their feet was still warm. There were magmatic rocks formed by the condensation of magma everywhere, and there were many crystals formed by mineral particles in it, but if you stepped on it, the whole rock would often shatter. Mo also jumped down behind. Because she didn't have the wind control technique to cushion like Nanling, she fell to the ground with a twang, directly collapsing the ground and smashing a small pit about 30 centimeters deep on the ground. She said speechlessly, "Why is the rock here so loose?" Nanling stretched out his hand and smiled. "This is what magma is like, but it seems that there should be nothing here." Mo didn't mind, and stretched out her hand to hold Nanling's hand and used the force to pull her calf out of the pit. However, her action actually became a trigger signal. The moment she pulled herself out of the pit, the surrounding magma rock made a violent crackling sound, and soon a large number of cracks appeared on it. To be honest, this scene is quite scary. I'm afraid that the ground will collapse, right? In fact, the rock layer supporting the riverbed can't support it and is about to fall down. Mo's eyes suddenly lit up and pointed to the distance and said, "Look what that is." Nanling was about to take Mo back, but when he looked in the direction of Mo's finger, he saw a grey crystal emitting a faint light in the dark in the cracks of the rock layer. That thing is not ordinary. Nanling had this thought in his mind at the time. Mo said, "My movement is too loud. You have the wind control technique and can quickly pass by. Let's take this stone away. I can feel it. It's a good thing." Nanling didn't hesitate and immediately jumped out and rushed to that place. He was a little excited. It was completely the excitement of the unknown before his eyes. This was also that fun of exploration. Chapter 93. It might be a strange thing. Nanling made a light leap towards the crack in the ground that revealed the trace of the gemstone. He seemed to glide towards that place without much effort. The most important thing was that he habitually did it silently, which made Mo, who was watching from behind, feel surprised. This is too suitable for doing sneaky things, right? When Nanling was gliding towards the grey crystal gemstone, he actually felt very strange. Because although he could see it, all the instruments equipped on his hurricane inner armor could not find this crystal. In other words, this crystal completely shielded all energy detection. Nanling came lightly above the stone. At this time, the ground below began to crack continuously. Seeing that the stone was loose and about to fall down, Nanling quickly leaned down and grabbed the stone. But it sank as soon as he touched it. This stone was it was bigger than he imagined. And according to his intelligence core analysis, he could see that this place was probably the intersection of 3 magma rivers. This place should have been filled with a lot of magma, like an ocean. The 3 clear riverbeds in front of us should be similar to the situation of ocean currents. However, this planet is also inevitably destined to cool down, so the magma that originally filled this place has receded, leaving only layers of rock plates that condensed when the magma receded. Now, this rock plate is broken. At this moment, a hook suddenly grabbed his waist. But Mo inserted one hand deeply into the rock wall and leaned on the side, and with the other hand, he threw out a long whip and wrapped it around his body, looking very cool. Nanling was holding the stone and fallen down, and Mo had suddenly pulled him back with force. But she overestimated the strength of the rock wall she relied on. When she exerted force, the rock layer on the other side also collapsed. It should be said that the collapse of this abyss cave was too violent, affecting the structural strength of the rock wall next to it. The 2 of them were going to fall into the abyss together. They should not die, but it would be very difficult. Fortunately, Nanling adjusted his state immediately. The spirit furnace in his chest outputted spiritual power in an unprecedented manner, and then the wisdom core controlled it outside his body. These spiritual powers were very violent. Under normal circumstances, they could never be taken into the body. They were powers that had not been refined by him. Therefore, they could only be stimulated in the simplest and crudest way, and could not be finely controlled with the participation of his will. Nanling was facing this situation, but he only needed to use the power of the spirit furnace to stimulate a gust of wind. He then used the LV9 wind control technique to integrate into the wind and immediately took off with the wind, like an eagle rising against the wind, and suddenly came to the cave above. He spread his legs to the sides and fixed himself in the tunnel they came down from, and then reached out and pulled Mo up from below. Mo passed through the crotch. When she got out from under Nanling's crotch, she looked at him with a very tangled look, and suspected that he did it on purpose. But seeing that Nanling was holding a black gem with a diameter of 60 to 70 centimeters in one hand and pulling her up with the other hand, it seemed that this posture was the right one. She chose to endure it, and then climbed up with Nanling out of the underground abyss. Nanling sighed and said, "This place may collapse." Mo said, "There is nothing we can do about it. This planet has existed for at least 7 billion years and has entered its twilight years. However, even a planet that has entered its twilight years can be used as an administrative planet, and there is even an advantage. The geological conditions are more stable. Anyway, for the more than 100,000 years of interstellar history of mankind, there has never been an administrative planet abandoned because the planet's lifespan has expired. They had a harvest, so they didn't delay any longer and immediately returned to the dock on the ground. This harvest might be extraordinary, and who knows what kind of discovery will be made. Nanling collected a lot of ore, of course. The most important one is the black gem. Even if he didn't have much experience, Nanling knew that the black gem that looked like a millstone must be extraordinary. When they returned to the ground, Fanny was already waiting there. She said, "Okay, you 2 went on an adventure without calling me." She felt isolated. Mo said, "I just wanted to collect some mineral specimens, but I didn't expect to get something else." He dismissed Fanny with one sentence, and then said, "Okay, don't stand there stupidly, study it with us. I suspect that the stone that Xiaonan picked up may be a rare object." Rare objects are not ordinary treasures, they are magical objects born by Thongling Yuikia under special circumstances, and often have unpredictable magical effects. Fanny said, "Okay, then you go and study what this dark matter is, and let me keep this stone first." After saying that, she took the stone and left, as if she had found a new toy. To be honest, even if this stone was not Nanling's main contribution, it was discovered by him and Mo together. Fanny's behavior seems a bit unkind, right? But Nanling didn't feel dissatisfied, because he knew that this was a generous boss. Even if Fanny neglected this point, his beloved Mo would definitely help him remember it. Sure enough, Mo said, "Just remember this bonus first, and then calculate it according to your contribution after this incident is over." She was very straightforward. Nanling also trusted her, so she said, "Okay, let's start the research." They soon came to the cabin where the cutting-edge research equipment was placed on the ship. Usually, there were almost no people here because there were no research talents on the ship. Of course, the operation of the equipment here was also very simple, as long as Xiaoxia assisted. Nanling couldn't really help here, and could only watch Mo busy sampling. The water that had been taken from Aunt Liji was still there, and the ore samples that had just been sampled were all placed in front of the femtometer microscope for irradiation. This femtometer microscope can definitely be said to be the pinnacle achievement of the entire human civilization in optics. It can use optical means to see the existence of 0.1 femtometers, which is a heavy tool for exploring the microscopic world. It should be noted that 1000 femtometers is equal to 1 picometer, and 1000 picometers is equal to 1 nanometer. This is a microscope that can see the internal structure of the nucleus. The only drawback is that a special light source is needed to use this microscope, and the entire laboratory is now immersed in a kind of incandescent light. In this light, Nanling can't even see the things in front of him normally. The lightest and the darkest actually have the same effect. He put on special glasses and then came to Mo's side to try to understand the process of the experiment. Fortunately, the intelligent core has been popularizing science for him, so he doesn't look so stupid. After a while, Mo let out a long breath and said, "I have figured it out. This dark matter is indeed not carried by hydrogen atoms, but to go a step further, it is carried by protons. It's just that hydrogen is a single proton element, so some manifestations will be more obvious." Mo seemed to be able to characterize this substance. But she didn't, but said, "There are still a few experimental samples now, we have to collect more samples. Not only on this planet, it's best to sample the matter in the Pluto galaxy." This sentence is full of Mo's rigorous style. She is really versatile and can also play a guest role as a research talent. Chapter 94. Throne System. Nanling was not good at scientific research, mainly because he did not have the mindset. He could only follow Mo's instructions and help with sampling. In fact, from this moment on, Nanling had a feeling of admiration for Mo. It was not the desire between men and women, but the envy of the outstanding people. Just like that, Nanling became an outfield worker, and he began to look for suitable samples to collect. In 2 months, he also built a small aircraft, flew out of Pluto, and began to collect interstellar dust around Pluto. In fact, it is not difficult for them to contact the outside world now. They just need to send a small aircraft to fly out of the Pluto system. But no one would do this, because it would only expose themselves when they are vulnerable. Although Fanny never showed it, Nanling could see that she was holding her breath. That day he collected another sample of space pumice and returned to the dock. Seeing the apple tree outside the door that had grown abnormally to more than 2 meters high, he shook his head helplessly. This black apple cannot be eaten. He even thought that if everything growing on this planet had this characteristic, then such a planet would be hard to sell. Except for being able to sell it to scientific research institutions, who would want an administrative planet that could only grow black things? At this moment, Mo sent him a message. "Come here quickly, Fanny is preparing to refine the weapon, I think you should be interested." Nanling quickly put down what he was doing and went to the upper deck. He saw Fanny, who had been in seclusion for 2 months in her room. Fanny's eyes were clear and her expression was serious, with the master's demeanor. It was not until this time that Nanling realized that Fanny was a cultivator in the Jindan period. At this moment, she suddenly drew out a long sword with a fiery red pattern of gold, threw the black gem up, and then danced with the sword in the air and cut it quickly. This strange gem was soon cut into a regular disc. Then Fanny carved golden rune threads on this disc. This is refining the weapon. Nanling thought Fanny was going to melt the entire gem. Fanny seemed to know his doubts and said in a deep voice, "I just used the runes to draw out the power inside it. If it is completely refined, it is easy to cause irreparable damage to it without knowing its specific characteristics. Okay, this kind of refining is very simple, it is the most basic, and then I just need to find a place where I can do experiments." After that, she carried that gem disc covered with gold patterns and ran outside. Nanling and Mo hurriedly followed. Fanny came to the power room of Zeudoxia, where the power core was located. Nanling looked at the core sphere that still exuded great power, and felt that this Zeudoxia should not have exerted its ability. At this time, Fanny walked forward, and there was a floating platform in front of her. This floating platform was like an altar. When Fanny placed the stone disc that he had cut on the altar, the gold patterns on the stone disc immediately shone and reflected the altar from a distance. Fanny then said, "This is the divine throne system of Zeudoxia, which is specially designed to carry rare objects. Without this system, Zeudoxia can only be regarded as an ordinary hunting ship, only 1/3 of the level of a capital ship. But now with this system, as long as it can be loaded with suitable rare objects, it can even surpass any capital ship." She said it confidently. Nanling asked in surprise, "Boss Fanny, have you already studied this substance? This is too surprising. Could it be that you are worthy at being a Jindan cultivator?" As a result, Fanny said carelessly, "How is that possible? I just summarized the characteristics of this thing. It's okay to use it. Why do I have to make it so clear?" Nanling In the Divine Throne system, the golden pattern on the grey stone plate has been completely connected to the altar, and then a kind of substantial power surged out and connected with the power core. Fanny smiled and said, "Okay, now let's try the new function of this Divine Throne system." As soon as the voice fell, a grey light flashed around Fanny. Then the light disappeared, and Fanny looked the same, except that her complexion had become darker. But Nanling immediately noticed the problem, and he said, "My detector can't see you." Fanny said proudly, "That's it. This doesn't just work on me, it can also make the entire Zhuoxia invisible." In the vast space, being undetectable, isn't that the same as being invisible? With this alone, the Zhuoxia will become an unprecedented assassin ship. Then Fanny asked, "By the way, have you guys made any progress in your research?" Nanling looked at Mo, who was just an assistant. Mo nodded calmly and said, "We can conclude that there is a special kind of proton. I call them inert protons. These inert protons hardly move in the microscopic world, so once an external energy wave shines on them, they will be absorbed by them. They will try to return to their proper energy level by absorbing external energy. It's just a pity that once these protons absorb enough energy, they will release it immediately and return to an inert state again." Fanny listened and said thoughtfully, "No wonder, what covered my whole body just now was a stream of inert protons. So it can be used for defense, sir." Mo said, "No, not only that, it can also be used as an energy reserve. Because the energy it absorbs is not constant before it explodes, but will be released slowly. So we just need to find a way to guide it, and it can be used as a backup energy source. Of course, inert protons are not the essential existence of this dark matter. It also exists in a more microscopic state. It's just that the research we can conduct can only go to this extent." Fanny rubbed her fists excitedly and said, "That's enough. It's completely enough. Shonen, you're our quartermaster and our weapons master. I want you to modify the weapons system of Zhuoxia. How violent it is." Nanling was stunned for a moment, then said, "Okay, I'll figure it out now, and I should be able to catch up before the end of the ship's construction period." Mo was surprised. She looked at Fanny and said, "Are you going to take revenge?" Fanny nodded and said carefully, "Of course, no matter who dares to attack me, I will fight back." Then she looked at Mo with a guilty conscience, as if waiting for her rebuttal. However, Mo just nodded seriously and said, "Then I will help Shiona to improve the design." At this time, Nanling and Fanny were looking at her in surprise. Mo quickly turned around and pushed Nanling out and said, "What are you looking at? Isn't it okay for me to check for emissions and fill in the gaps for you?" Fanny was stunned for a moment, then clenched her fist and laughed. She was very happy. It felt good to be supported by others. But Nanling felt a little stressed. Why did Mo push him all the way to his room? What was she doing? Well, okay, just studying the blueprints together. As for why they were studying in his room, maybe it was because it was more convenient for him to go anywhere. He could also look at the 4 apple trees with black apples hanging outside the window. The scenery was also good. Chapter 95 The Hateful Party A. Redesigning the weapon system of Zhuoxia is definitely a huge challenge for Nanling. But he has Mo to assist him. He really didn't expect that he would be able to enjoy such treatment as a young lady one day. He is not a young lady, but a young master. Without trying, it is really hard to imagine how easy it would be to work with Mo, especially when Mo assists. No matter what kind of questions he asks, Mo can find the answer within his knowledge and help him design a feasible plan as soon as possible. Nanling did not think that the two of them cooperated well, he just thought that Mo was really amazing. With such an assisting ability, it is no wonder that Fanny only needs to be responsible. After taking stock of all the weapon slots on Zhuoxia and the equipment that can be adapted, Nanling and Mo began to discuss the plan. Seeing that he was a little hesitant, Mo encouraged him. "This is the task Fanny gave you. I will just assist you. If you have any ideas, just bring them up." Nanling hesitated and said, "I have 2 plans here." Mo was quite surprised to hear this. He didn't expect Nanling to come up with 2 plans at once. She has a very rich reserve of basic knowledge, but she often cannot gather all these things into physical objects by herself. She is a person who needs others to make decisions for her. She raised her lips slightly and said, "Tell me about it." Nanling nodded, then raised a finger and said, "First, by the way, did Boss Fanny name that stone?" Mo said, "It's called Phantom Disc." Nanling resisted the urge to complain. "That millstone-like disc is called disc?" "Forget it, Phantom Disc is Phantom Disc." He said, "Well, both solutions are based on giving full play to the function of Phantom Disc. First, there is no need to add additional weapon modules, but the cooling and charging circuits must be added to the Zooxia, so that the charging and cooling speed of the main guns can be further improved, and a fast maneuvering mode must be added to ensure that the fastest speed can be started and moved from a static state. Nanling paused. He believed that Mo could understand the meaning of these configurations without further explanation. This is the modification of the long-range sniper flow, which allows the Zooxia to hide in the distance and leave with one shot, while the enemy cannot find that trace of the Zooxia. Sure enough, Mo nodded with inspiration, indicating that she understood. Nanling raised her second finger and said, "The second option is to equip Zooxia with the most advanced optical camouflage, and then add a weapon module with great power at close range. The main gun doesn't need to be touched. This option is to use optical camouflage to make up for the last defect of the ghost eye, so that the Zooxia can be completely invisible. Add high-powered weapons at close range, and this is the route of a close-range assassin." Mo listened and felt that both options were ways to utilize the function of the ghost eye. She personally preferred the first option. After all, the first option sounded very safe. She asked, "Which one do you recommend?" Nanling said, "Me? Of course I recommend the first one. After all, this is killing on the premise of preserving oneself." "But," Mo continued, "but I'm afraid Fanny won't like it." Nanling has gradually become accustomed to this kind of tacit understanding of thinking. He nodded and said, "What's more, we haven't really verified the ability of Yao yet. Now it is only feasible in theory. In this case, there is at least room for trial and error in the first plan." Mo nodded, and she said, "You're right, that's the truth. But these two transformation plans still need to be confirmed by Fanny. Let's perfect the specific plan first, and then let her make the choice." Nanling had a bad premonition at the time. Under a strong sense of crisis, he made the first plan extremely detailed and feasible, while the second plan was done rather sloppily, and many data were exaggerated, making it seem impossible to achieve. When the two plans were completed and reviewed by Mo first, she showed a very appreciative smile. She rarely smiles, but her smile at this time is like meeting a like-minded person. It must be said that she feels that she and Nanling are very compatible in terms of how to target Fanny. However, Fanny blinked innocently, and then said, "Both plans are good, I want both." Nanling! Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark Mo. Nanling didn't expect Fanny to have such an answer, and Mo looked tired as if she was used to it. Nanling didn't give up, he argued. "But Boss Fanny, how can these two plans be parallel? If they are installed at the same time, our energy pipelines will conflict." Fanny waved her hand and said almost without thinking, "Then make it modular, our ship can support this modular energy pipeline. Xiaonan, I have seen your design, it is very much in line with my mind, you must help me realize it. Don't worry, I will prepare a good thing for you as a gift." Boss Fanny made a heartfelt promise to Nanling, making him feel like crying but without tears. After he finished drawing the pie, he was driven out. Fanny and Mo still had some girlish whispers to say. Nanling could only return to his room alone, and then frowned at the blueprint of Zooxia, trying to figure out a way to make the two compatible after modularization as Fanny said. This blueprint was too complicated, so complicated that it burnt his brain, so that he was helpless even if he turned on the full computing power of the intelligent core. In fact, he could borrow Zooxia's computing power, which would be much simpler. But he found that what he lacked was not a little computing power, but the ability to summarize and condense these calculation results into a thinking ability. This is because his own brain's computing power is not enough. But if he polishes it slowly, it is not without a chance. Nanling tried hard to think of a way, and finally he actually thought of a way. That is, upgrade his brain first. Of course, this does not mean that he wants to make a brain transformation, but that he wants to prepare to start building a foundation. It was so sudden. After all, although he was doing scientific research during this period, he did not fall behind in cultivation. In the state of his full body, the spiritual power in his body has quickly accumulated to full. After all, in ancient times, this meant carrying a spirit gathering array on your back for training all day long. Not only is it a spirit gathering array, it can also be trained automatically around the clock, so it is reasonable to reach perfection in 2 or 3 months after breaking through the realm. After all, it is only the key refining stage, so it is normal to be faster. Nanling thinks it is normal, but there is a serious problem that bothers him now. That is, it is not impossible to build a foundation normally, but it is better to build a foundation with the infusion of spiritual power. But unfortunately, he is very poor now and has no money for the infusion of spiritual power. A while ago, he really couldn't help it and spent a lot of money on the manufacture of hurricane armor and functional modules. He used up the money he saved with great difficulty for the infusion of spiritual power. Chapter 96 Nanling's Aesthetics. Nanling was short of money. Even if he spent most of his money on the hurricane armor, why was there almost nothing left now? He was puzzled. As a result, at this moment, his door was pushed open carelessly, and a woman in a bikini walked in with her hips twisted, and went to rummage through Nanling's refrigerator. "Do you have anything delicious? I'm greedy." Aunt Liji rummaged through the refrigerator for a while without finding anything good, and asked with some disappointment. Nanling seemed to know how his money was gone. Day after day, he wanted to really eat some good food, and there was such a guy who would take advantage of him from time to time. How could he not be poor? So he said quietly, "Aunt Liji, I'm short of money for spiritual power infusion, can you lend me some money?" Liji was stunned for a moment, and then projected her account and said, "Do you think I can help you with this?" She was frankly nervous. There was only a 3-digit amount in her account, which was completely inconsistent with her high salary on the Zhuoxia. It can only be said that the digestive system that Nanling made for her harmed her. Well, it also harmed Nanling herself. At this time, Mo had finished her private conversation with Fanny and appeared at the door. She was very polite and did not go in immediately but knocked on the door gently. She did not think that the two people inside were doing anything immoral. After all, she had been with Nanling for so long and was quite aware of the traditional aesthetics of this young man. Liji's prosthesis was not in Nanling's taste at all. As for how she knew it, hectares, wouldn't the elder sister know why little boys like to peek at her? "What are you talking about?" Mo didn't care whether Nanling's aesthetics were similar to hers, but just asked casually. Nanling was a little embarrassed to speak. After all, borrowing money was a bit embarrassing in his opinion. Liji's eyes lit up and she said, "Xiaonan doesn't have enough money for the spiritual power infusion, and wants to borrow some from me, but unfortunately I'm also poor." Mo immediately said decisively, "How much?" Nanling's eyes were immediately filled with intoxication, otherwise how could he say that his aesthetic taste was born on Mo? She was so happy to give money. But Nanling still had to be proud, and didn't ask Mo to borrow money, but said, "Can I get an advance on my salary first?" Mo nodded, then shook her head and said, "It's not good to get an advance on your salary directly. What if you want a salary increase next?" "Forget it, let me think about it." Mo rejected Nanling's request. Nanling was just feeling a little strange. This was not like Mo's style. However, the next moment, he found that his contract had changed again. It was described above. Employees who have signed a formal long-term contract with Zhuoxia now can receive a standard strength prosthesis or a spiritual power infusion or a recovery treatment for free. Nanling was stunned when he saw it, and then looked at Mo and didn't know what to say. Mo looked at him and said calmly, "It's a good opportunity to set welfare rules, which can also be used as regulations to attract other outstanding talents in the future." Liji nodded and said, "Yes, I joined the big family of Zhuoxia now because the welfare here is so good." Mo then curled the corners of her mouth and said, "How many years does your contract have to be? After all, we have to set rules now. If it's shorter, it will be against the rules." Nanling felt that Mo was the most beautiful person in the world at this time. He waved his hand and said generously, "Fill in whatever you want, I will accept any number that Sister Mo fills in." Mo nodded and then said, "Then I will fill in 5 years for you. After 5 years, you will be 23 years old, and you may have the idea of changing." To be honest, at this moment, Nanling really heard a gentle feeling in Mo's calm and emotionless narration. She was really thinking for him. Nanling said, "Sister Mo, just make the decision." He didn't say too much in this regard. Anyway, he would try his best to repay her with his work. To be honest, it would be reasonable to regard this free spiritual power infusion as a reward for his previous return of the ghost disc, but Mo obviously did not intend to do so. In other words, he might have another reward for the ghost disc. As for the stupid words that the ghost disc should belong to him because he picked it up, there is no need to say more. As an employee of Zhuoxia, a pure worker, it is completely in line with the values of this era for him to take the initiative to hand over the good things he picked up to the boss. The workers of this era are so miserable. Mo probably saw that he had extraordinary interests, so she did not think of signing a long contract to tie him down completely. And this 5-year contract during his weak stage actually looks more like a boosting platform for him to take off. Nanling was grateful in his heart but did not say much, because he found that Mo hated to hear him say thank you. Mo was secretly relieved to see that he did not say something like "I love you" and then said, "Don't forget what Fanna told you. Let's make a plan after you succeed in building your foundation." She nodded to Nanling and then went on with her work. Although the modularization of the energy pipeline has not been solved, the weapon systems of the two schemes can be prepared first. This kind of thing does not need Nanling to operate. As a universal assistant, she can solve it at will. When Nanling's energy pipeline plan comes out, she can just put it on and use it, and there is no need to worry about affecting the construction period. Nanling lay down in the recuperation cabin again. He has laid down twice. This is a different third time. The common point is that he wasted these 3 times. This is very cool. Adjust the state, and then leave the breakthrough too. He suddenly paused, and suddenly made a bold move. He pulled the wisdom core decorated as a necklace from his neck and threw it out of the cabin. Then he lay down in the recuperation cabin. The intelligence core he threw out happened to be caught by Li Ji. She said helplessly, "How can you throw such a thing casually? Even if you are not afraid of being picked up by someone, what if it breaks?" Nanling said, "Things that will be eliminated sooner or later, so just break them." "Aunt Li Ji, if you want to protect me, can you keep an eye on the door instead of staring at me?" He was a little scared. What if the old aunt suddenly gets beastly? Li Ji curled her lips and said, "Isn't it better to check the size for you for free? Forget it, young people are just shy. I'm outside, call me anytime." After saying that, she turned and left. Nanling was still frightened. The old aunt who was as fierce as a wolf was not easy to deal with. He didn't quite understand it. She only had one brain left. Without the body to secrete hormones for her, how could she have so many ideas? At this time, the nutrient solution began to fill the recuperation cabin. This was another completely different nutrient solution formula, which was more effective and lasted longer. With the circulation and purification function of the recuperation cabin, it could be used for up to 10 days. In other words, he had to complete the breakthrough within 10 days. If he could not break through in 10 days, then he would have missed the opportunity to come here in vain. This infusion could only increase his cultivation by some insignificant amount. Chapter 97 10 Ways to Right Wind. Building a foundation is a very important key for any cultivator, and it is the beginning of transcendence. The difficulty of building a foundation is really not that difficult for contemporary cultivators who have the assistance of 3 sets of equipment and external blessings such as spiritual power infusion. So what exactly does building a foundation do? It is to follow that foundation building method, jump out of the meridians of the human body, use the spiritual orifices around the body as the base point, and use spiritual power as the thread to reconstruct the pathway and framework for the flow of spiritual power. This is rebuilding the foundation of the sky. However, this way of building a foundation always feels like a strong science fiction style in Nanling's eyes. How can this be so similar to the energy pipelines he has been in contact with? He was a little confused. Did the predecessors of this era add scientific thinking when restoring the abilities of cultivators, or has scientific thinking been distorted by these metaphysical contents? Maybe it's both. Anyway, when Nanling was building a foundation, he felt like he was making himself into a circuit board. Building a foundation began. A stream of pure spiritual power was infused into Nanling's body, and began to become the pain for him to graffiti with his body as a scroll. The first step of the foundation building period of Chunfeng was very important, which is to teach the cultivator how to connect the spiritual orifices in his body and build the foundation into a formation. This is to treat his body as a spiritual formation. Well, or to treat it as a spiritual talisman. The meaning is different, but the essence is the same. Chunfeng was the Feng family's magic formula, and the Feng family does not keep much secrets on it. What they practice is what they publish. It's not that the Feng family is not afraid that outsiders will become the host after they succeed in cultivation. It's just that the upper class of this era has long passed the level of controlling people with skills, and has changed to gathering people with resources. When those cultivators want to obtain the cultivation resources they need, they must join a certain system, so these cultivators, no matter how talented they are, must serve this system. The major forces of this era represent these systems, and they use them to strengthen themselves, and eventually build Iron Curtain rule in their respective star fields. Nanling has no intention of changing anything in this era. He just wants to climb up by himself, so he enjoys the benefits brought to him by the young ladies with peace of mind. The spiritual power turned into threads, spreading rapidly in his body, connecting the spiritual power-filled acupoints one by one, making the spiritual acupoints the foundation of the formation, and then a new spiritual power running track appeared. Nanling recognized this trap. Isn't it wind? The wind in the rune language. Nanling was very familiar with this rune word when he was learning wind art. And the entry of foundation building was like completing the 8 ways to write wind in his body. That's right, he had to draw 8 winds between the spiritual anchor points in his body, so that it would be the 8th turn of foundation building, and achieve the perfect foundation building in Xuanfengzhui. Nanling didn't care too much about this matter at first. After all, he thought that with his control over spiritual power and the state of receiving spiritual power infusion, this foundation building should be very simple. But as he easily completed the first wind word and started the second wind word, he felt something was wrong. Then when he completed the third wind word, he finally realized that each wind word actually meant a level of his wind control art. The level of wind control art is actually linked to the number of foundation building levels. Nanling went from being incredulous to suddenly realizing. Before the wind controlling technique reached LV8, the wind controlling technique was actually equivalent to his ability to control his spiritual power. However, after the wind controlling technique reached LV8, there was actually a divergence in this matter. Nanling's ability to control his spiritual power was definitely beyond LV8, as can be seen from the fact that he was able to defeat the constant power of the wisdom core and even manipulate it at will. When the wind controlling technique reached LV9, he had a unique understanding of the wind, which was an improvement in the level of consciousness and understanding. But no matter what it was, Nanling felt that he seemed to be able to try to add another turn to the foundation building. He quickly completed the 5th turn of the foundation building, and used the endless spiritual power to complete 5 different wind characters. He was very familiar with the writing of these wind characters, which were reflected in the wind techniques he knew. More importantly, the Xuanfengzhui had 10 levels of foundation building, and in fact, the cultivation of each level was related to the corresponding wind character. In other words, when he completed the first wind character, it actually meant that he had completed the foundation building. Because the first level of foundation building is about the first wind character that has been drawn. Once the wind character is completed, it can be filled up to the fullness, which is the perfection of the first level. And what about the second level of cultivation? That is to draw the second wind character on the basis of the first wind character. And so on. The so-called 8 turns of foundation building is actually to draw all the wind characters required for the first 8 levels of foundation building in one breath. After that, it only needs to accumulate naturally before the 9th level, and there will be bottlenecks after the 9th level. Nanling did not think much of this time, but immediately slowed down his foundation building speed, and tried to study and understand the wind character of the 9th level of foundation building. He knew that the first 8 wind characters would be used when building the foundation, and he had already thoroughly comprehended them in the previous period of time. Only the wind characters of the last 2 levels, which he thought would not be used, did not have a deep understanding. In this process, even if the external spiritual power infusion equipment had automatically reduced the spiritual power output because it sensed that the spiritual power he was using was slowing down, there was still a large amount of mellow spiritual power that could be easily refined was wasted. But at this time, Nanling no longer had the heart to worry about these things. He had to slow down the speed of the wind character in his body. He had to comprehend the mystery of the 9th wind character before he finished the 8th wind character. The key is that he could use the intelligence core to simulate the first 8 wind characters before writing them, and he was absolutely sure of it. But the 9th wind character, 5 days later, he delayed until the 5th day, and the spiritual power prepared for one infusion was almost exhausted. He finally completed the description of the 8th wind character, and the 9th wind character. Nanling had to start. With a melancholy mood, he drew this wind character bit by bit. At this time, the spiritual power introduced to him by the spiritual power infusion device had been exhausted. This was what he had to face without the assistance of the intelligence core. But he still had his own spiritual power. The power in the spirit furnace was completely unusable at this time. So he continued to draw this wind character with his own power. Until this word was finally completed, and his own spiritual power was consumed by as much as 40%. This consumption is acceptable, but it is definitely impossible to maintain the description of the last 10th word. Not only is his spiritual power insufficient, but his understanding of this word has not reached the level to which he can continue to describe it. This is what annoyed him. In order to ensure the success of the 9th word, he wasted too much time on it to ensure that it would be safe, so that he had no time to comprehend the 10th word. This is actually because he was not prepared enough. Then the spiritual power stopped running, and the 9 spiritual words were laid in an instant. The superposition became extremely solid and difficult to shake. and then, all his remaining spiritual power was poured into this 9-watt system, filling a very small part of the first layer. I'm afraid that it did not even fill up 1/10. This is the foundation building, which greatly expanded his body's tolerance for spiritual energy, and thus started the process of his life level improvement. The only bad thing was that when he finished the breakthrough and sat up in the convalescent cabin, he found that all the female creatures on the ship were staring at him with wide eyes. At this moment, he felt that he might die. Where are his clothes? Damn it, they knew that letting Leegi as their guardian was unreliable. How could they just let someone in so easily? I want to die. Chapter 98. One missing. Nanling is very embarrassed now. Can he still give people privacy? He looked at Leegi and asked with his eyes. How did you protect me? Leeji's head is a prosthesis, so she can't show her eyes, so she directly typed a fine word on her eyes to replace eyes. With Nanling's eyesight, he can naturally see what the line means. You'll lie down for 5 or 6 days without coming out, and the 2 ladies come to care about you. I can't stop it. Nanling sighed and felt that his reputation was ruined. But he noticed that, apart from Leegi, the lustful old aunt, the other 2, Fan and Mo, seemed to be very serious. Then he must not act in an indecent manner. As long as he didn't show embarrassment, he would not be embarrassed. His expression suddenly changed, revealing a look of regret and sighing, and he murmured softly. The wind has 10 changes, but unfortunately one is missing. This is very profound and intimidating. Anyway, Leegi doesn't understand things about cultivation, so she thinks he is very impressive. Even Fanny and Mo showed surprised expressions. They were obviously very curious about Nanling's breakthrough. Of course, they were girls after all, and they couldn't continue to stare at the boy's little house and show their curiosity, right? Fanny immediately smiled and said, after all, it only takes 1 day to build a foundation normally, and at the latest 3 days. I was quite worried when I saw you didn't come out for 5 days, but now I'm relieved that you are all right. After saying that, she turned around and left. It was just that her steps were a little messy when she walked, and she looked embarrassed. Originally, Nanling was lying well, and there was nothing strange about her, but she didn't expect Nanling to wake up suddenly, so she felt very embarrassed. Fortunately, as long as she didn't show embarrassment, it would be equivalent to not being embarrassed. Nanling also drove away the lecturer's old aunt, and then hurriedly got up to put on his clothes. The main thing was that it was okay to be looked at by 2 young and beautiful ladies, but he couldn't stand the gaze of the lecturer's old aunt, and felt that he was not clean. However, just as he hurried back to the room to clean himself, he raised his eyebrows and found that he had received a new group entry prompt. Cultivation Discussion Group. Nanling had never thought that the ancient term cultivation could be so harmoniously connected with group chat. Then he entered the group and saw, as expected, there were only 2 people, Fanny and Mo. Another small group of 3 people. Of course, this group is still quite advanced. There is an independent data space here. The 3-dimensional images of Nanling, Fanny and Mo can all be displayed in this data space, making it seem as if they are talking face to face. Nanling was quite curious about this, but after seeing Mo and Fanny appear in this data space, Nanling remembered the previous embarrassment and decided to take the initiative. He had to divert everyone's attention, otherwise when he saw those 2 people now, he would think of the scene of them staring at his little home. I suspect that you have another group where I'm not. Fanny was diverted at the time and sneered, don't think I don't know, you must have a group that I don't know. She is really smart. Mo glanced at her dimly, and Fanny immediately shuddered, then said, okay, let's not mention this, okay? Just know it in your heart, don't expose it. Mo then retracted his gaze from Fanny, looked back at Nanling and said seriously, we pulled you into this group, in fact, you should know the purpose from the name of the group, right? Nanling nodded, and then asked, but if it is to discuss the way of cultivation, then why not invite Ding Xiaoshu and Taoqi? They are also on the way of cultivation, right? Fanny said nonchalantly, they are different from us, don't you see the difference? Nanling was surprised for a moment, then said, could it be the 9 turns of Foundation Establishment? Mo's image shook his head and said, the 9 turns of Foundation Establishment just makes it more likely for you to awaken a special talent, which will make it more convenient for you to practice towards the Golden Core in the future. The reason for not inviting them is that they have never been real practitioners. Practice is just a tool for them to become stronger. If there is a significant improvement in themselves, they will not mind undergoing body transformation at all. But the fact is that excessive body transformation will actually affect the final achievement of cultivation. You should have a deeper understanding of this point since you have just completed the foundation building. Nanling nodded repeatedly. After all, the foundation building is to reconstruct the spiritual array in the body as the foundation, while the body transformation will erase all the spiritual orifices in the body. How can you build a spiritual array? Fanasidon said, speaking of which, the legendary ancient cultivators do not have our wisdom cores, auxiliary instruments and spiritual furnaces to assist in cultivation, nor do they have the blessing method of spiritual power infusion. The success of the foundation building is probably only 1 or 3 turns. At the time, they can still make great strides and break through the realm, and then lead mankind to defeat the plague of the nether locusts and achieve the current human territory. So the number of turns achieved when building the foundation and whether special talents can be awakened are not the key to enlightenment. Fana said with a serious face. Nanling felt very strange when listening to it, because the ancient cultivators mentioned by Fana seemed to be completely different from what he understood. That's right. According to the current chronology, the cultivators and immortals he understood were probably in the ancient times of mankind. But no matter what, the young lady's knowledge and temperament are still quite online. At the same time, he also understood the function of this small group. He said cheerfully, "Okay, then let's discuss the dodo." Mo. Discuss the dodo, a novel way of saying it. No, it's a very ancient way of saying it. Fanny nodded and said, "I like this way of saying it, it sounds very advanced." That's right, we are going to discuss the dodo. As she said that, she first said, "Then let me start. I don't think I have much to say, because my method of building the 9 foundations is a real secret in my family and cannot be told." She covered her face and said awkwardly. Mo nodded and said, "Although my family has no inheritance in this area, fortunately I have also awakened a special talent and now I am only 1 step away from the golden elixir. With your talent, Shonen, just practice step by step, and the golden elixir is destined." Nanling felt something was wrong when she heard it. Is this a discussion of the dodo? Why does it seem like he is showing off? Helplessly, he could only start to show off. There is nothing to hide about my breakthrough to the 9th stage of foundation building. I just suddenly realized that the information I got from the wisdom core is wrong. The wisdom core told me that I can only build the 8th stage of foundation building. That's because the wisdom core can only raise the wind control technique to LV8, and I have the wind control technique at LV9. His answer was very frank. But he still had some reservations, because he felt that he actually had some spare energy after the 9th stage of foundation building, but he didn't do enough preparation in the early stage, so he could only give up with regret. That's why he sighed. The wind has 10 changes, but 1 is missing, which is really a pity. But things are like this, at least with his efforts, he has caught up with Miss Fanny in the matter of foundation building. This is also that first time he feels that he can catch up with these young ladies. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 99 Talent Flowing Wind. Although this discussion seemed a bit out of place, it still answered many key questions for Nanling. For example, he asked whether he could awaken special talents. Mo comforted him. Generally, special talents are awakened within 7 days after the successful foundation building. During this period, you just need to keep a normal mind. If it comes, it will find you unexpectedly. Nanling nodded to show that he understood. At the same time, he also learned some small secrets that he didn't know before. Maybe they are not secrets, but he didn't expect that there would be such differences. Just like his 3-type Zifting intelligence core, it can directly give him LV8 wind control. But if this type of intelligence core is to be used with fire-based exercises, it can only give LV6 fire control. It's just that most people will inevitably choose a 3-piece set that matches the attributes of the exercises, so this question is not really a problem. He said a lot of words again, which was basically to answer Nanling's questions. However, Nanling's 9-turn method of foundation building was also very inspiring to them. This is the best display of using one's own talents to catch up with the heritage of the family. After chatting for a while, Nanling washed up and dressed, wanting to take a nap. But he felt very energetic just after lying down. After all, he had been lying down for nearly 6 days. If he lay down again, it seemed a bit unreasonable. As for cultivation, he had been comprehending the 9th wind character for the past 5 days. It was not just the wind character in the Xuanfeng, but also that gathering of his own perception. He was already very tired, so let him rest. Anyway, with the 3 sets, his body would practice normally, and it didn't matter if he didn't intervene at all. To be honest, the spiritual furnace would really play a role after the foundation was established. Because he found that each layer of the foundation formation could actually help him refine spiritual power. And the speed of refining spiritual power with just one layer of the foundation formation was already twice as fast as he originally relied on himself. In other words, his 9-turn foundation formation was an 18-fold increase in refining speed. Of course, in fact, it was not that exaggerated. In his opinion, the 9 layers of the foundation formation were superimposed together, which was about 10 times the spiritual power refining speed before the previous breakthrough. This was already very exaggerated. If he could only open a water line from the faucet of the spirit furnace when refining spiritual power, now he can open a rushing water stream. The spiritual power flowed into his body, and was transformed layer by layer by the 9-layer spirit array. It was soon refined into pure spiritual power and accumulated in the first wind spiritual foundation. When this layer of spiritual foundation is full, it will be considered that the first level of foundation building is complete. Nanling estimated the time and found that it would take him 50 days to complete the first level of foundation building. He didn't know if this was fast in this era, but it was definitely faster than before. To be honest, it's no wonder that the cultivators of this era don't look like cultivators at all. It's really hard to find insight when cultivation is full of technology and hard work. Nanling simply got up and poured himself a drink, then opened the balcony of his room, which was the porthole of his room, so that he could walk outside in one step. Looking at the increasingly tall black apple tree, Nanling simply jumped to the top of the engine jet of the spacecraft, which was also the highest point of the spacecraft, and sat down. He sat down and took a sip of the drink, and his mind was empty. He chose to empty himself at this time. At this moment, he felt that everything he saw was clear. The Pluto in front of him was gloomy because of the inert protons, as if it was covered with a layer of underworld filter. But the world in his eyes had long lost the color defined by the secular world, and turned into a kind of wind color. It was an indescribable color. He just felt as if he saw countless different winds forming the world in front of him. He was not surprised by this, but just felt that he should be in the integration and perception of the wind. It was not that similar things had never happened before. The last time he integrated into the wind, he successfully broke through the wind control technique to LV9. He thought this should be the normal performance of the wind control technique LV9. But what surprised him was that in the world in front of him, there were countless winds arranged in front of him as if waiting for him to inspect, or to choose. Only then did he understand that this was his talent, right? Nanling noticed that his current state of consciousness was a bit strange. It can't be said that he was without thoughts, but he would move as soon as he thought. Thinking directly determines action, and there will be no hesitation, thinking, etc. In other words, it is more appropriate to say that he is in a subconscious state of action at this time. And the wind in front of him at this time, some are powerful and can destroy withering and decaying, some are strange and can change in 1,000 ways, and some are warm and can heal people's body and mind, but he doesn't like them very much, because he thinks what's special about these abilities. He can see through their principles at a glance, so naturally he doesn't bother to stay. In his subconscious state at this time, he doesn't know what he is looking for at all, but he knows that he has to find a wisp of wind that suits him. But he accidentally saw a ball of fire. He is here to choose the wind. What are you doing here? A little flame, go away. The flame that finally squeezed in was slapped away by him. Well, this flame feels quite pitiful, but it's a pity that Nanling's consciousness is very simple and pure now, and he doesn't like it if he doesn't like it. And he saw many kinds of wind in this world vaguely composed as wind. The more he looked, the more complicated it became. The more he looked, the more upset he felt. Suddenly, he wanted to choose something simple. With this thought, the most gentle and simple of all the winds appeared in front of him, the flowing wind. This flowing wind is the most common and basic talent that all wind cultivators may awaken. It can be called mediocre. But at this time, Nanling didn't care about it at all. Instead, this simple and obedient little thing was most in line with his heart, so he waved his hand and grabbed this flowing wind in his hand. Nanling woke up in shock, and then continued to recall what happened just now. However, what happened just now is fading from his memory quickly, just like a dream bubble, which would be quickly forgotten after waking up from a dream. Nanling shook his head. He just felt that he should have awakened a talent that was not very special. But what was the talent? Flowing wind. He had an epiphany in his heart. It seemed that the talent he awakened was flowing wind. Nanling was a little surprised that his awakened talent was so ordinary, but what was even more surprising was that he found that he was actually quite happy about it, and didn't feel disappointed at all. Forget it, let's not think about it for now. This talent may seem mediocre, but it seems quite suitable for Nanling. He even felt that it didn't matter whether he had talent or not, because the so-called talents now are just characteristics that could be mastered naturally when they reached a high level. Chapter 100 Design Finalization. What kind of talent is flowing wind? The intelligence core cannot find out what his talent is, but there is a detailed analysis and record of flowing wind. As one of the talents with the most awakenings in the wind domain for tens of thousands of years, the research on flowing wind is actually very thorough and transparent. In any description, it is described that flowing wind strengthens perception, control and action. Perception is similar to gaseous perception, while control strengthens the control of wind spiritual power and the influence of wind spiritual power on natural airflow. Finally, flowing wind can also be used to increase the ability to move. After reading these descriptions, Nanling suddenly felt that this talent was a bit ordinary, but the more he read, the more he liked it. Because it can bless almost all series of wind techniques, which is not easy. Perhaps it is because it is basic, and the basic means all-encompassing. Close your eyes slightly, and feel the wind flowing through your body, and the whole person will be integrated into it. Flowing wind even makes it easier for him to merge with the wind, making all his feelings about the wind become extremely smooth. That's right, the description of silky is the most appropriate description he could think of at the moment. He looked up at the sky again, and felt that the mountain behind him was quite obstructing his vision. He also wanted to go to the top of the mountain to look out. With just this thought, he disappeared from the spot, leaving only some scattered airflows. When he appeared the next moment, he found that he had already arrived at the top of the mountain. However, he did not feel any discomfort due to the rapid change of space, because his mind had arrived here before his body arrived. Great, he found that he liked this feeling too much. On the top of the mountain, you can see the clouds in the world. And countless air currents converge and weep here, making Nanling seem to have turned into a unique detector, which can perceive the information in it through this densely woven wind. Nanling thought it was very interesting. Now he just felt that he couldn't wait to buy more wind skills, which was the key to his analogy. But as soon as this thought came up, he was dragged into a sad reality. That is, he is very poor now and has no money. Then he naturally thought of his current job. Unexpectedly, after a successful foundation building, he really opened up his mind. Because he found that the functional modules in the energy pipeline can actually be applied to the spirit array stacking method in the 9 turns of foundation building. In the spirit array stacking, many spiritual orifices are shared. As shared nodes of different spirit arrays, they can even ensure that different spirit arrays run without interference. It is undoubtedly full of difficulties to achieve this, but Nanling does not need him to run 2 modes at the same time now. In addition to the shared energy pipeline, he can make a non-shared part into a module and then switch back and forth. Isn't this a solution? He didn't bother to try his Liufen talent again, but summarized his ideas, and then immediately made a preliminary design and handed it to Mo. After seeing this, Mo praised him. I was going to remind you after a while, but I didn't expect you to figure it out so quickly. Nanling was surprised. Did you know it a long time ago? Mo said. Similar homework is available in the College of Higher Learning in our ancient domain, and there are many ready-made templates. Nanling couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He didn't expect that the method he had worked so hard to figure out actually had a better solution here. The College of Higher Learning is really a place that makes people feel disappointed. Nanling found that he was more disappointed because he couldn't enter there to learn the wisdom of the College of Higher Learning, rather than his own intelligence and talent seemed dispensable in front of it. Mo changed the subject at this time and said, but I think the design you made is better. After all, the templates taught in the college are fixed routines, which are not as good as your tailor-made for the actual situation. My college tutor also said that this template is just to give an idea, and truly smart people will use it as inspiration to adjust according to the actual situation. Let's polish your ideas together. This is much more useful than those templates. Nanling felt much more comfortable after hearing this. At the same time, he was even more grateful to Mo. He could see that this was Mo imparting some relevant knowledge to him. Therefore, Nanling studied very hard, and even if there were some things he didn't understand, he could quickly master the tricks under Mo's guidance. Even in this process, in order to make a new optical camouflage system for the Zhuoxia, Nanling also used his own refraction to participate in the experiment, which not only strengthened the function of this optical camouflage, but also greatly improved his refraction. Various functional modules were quickly implemented, and the hull of the Zhuoxia had some subtle changes. Relatively speaking, the transformation in the close-range stealth mode is relatively simple, because they are all new functional modules and will not intersect with the original lines. The long-range sniper mode emphasizes the main gun bombardment, and even the firing form of the main gun has changed, which makes the changes more difficult. Therefore, when doing these things, Nanling became a helper, and Mo was mainly responsible for handling them. The two worked together for more than 2 months. Nanling couldn't help but sigh. Sister Mo, you're actually a good teacher. You're so good at teaching. Mo couldn't help but smile when she heard it, as if she was very happy with the compliment. She said, "That's because you learn well. Okay, the main module is almost done. Now have you thought about what kind of shipborne weapon should be equipped for the second mode?" Nanling hesitated for a moment and said, "Since it is in the second mode, I think it should maximize the power in close combat. Although our Zhuoxia is only 1/3 of the current main battleship in all aspects, there is one attribute that I have paid attention to that is far superior: agility. So I want a weapon that can maximize the lethality of the warship in close combat." Mo heard it and said, "If you do this, the energy consumed by the weapon will be too much, and I am afraid that the shield and mobility will not be guaranteed when firing." Nanling said, "So I am thinking of a close-ranged weapon that does not consume much energy and is powerful." Mo thought Nanling was talking about a fantasy of the time. But then she came back to her senses, and she also thought of something. She looked at Nanling in surprise and said, "You don't want to use the design of kinetic weapons, do you?" Nanling nodded and said, "The Gauss device of kinetic weapons doesn't use much energy, and the key to increasing the power is actually to choose what kind of warhead. I think we can think about the warhead. In short, this is the one throw of the dice style of play, using the Gauss device to launch a large number of expensive special warheads to achieve the purpose of huge damage. Just spend money." Nanling is usually a very frugal person, but when designing for others, it is very bold. But it is undeniable that this spending money design concept is very consistent with the current situation of Zhuoxia. After all, although Zhuoxia doesn't have much cash flow now, it has all been exchanged for a large amount of resources. What else is there to think about? Just smash it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.